Welcome, everybody, to tonight's broadcast of the Demacia Cup here on LPL English. My name is Gordo. I'm going to be joined by Bloxer on tonight's cast, and we have got one final semifinal to get out of the way, Bloxer. It's JDG taking on LGD.
What an exciting matchup right here. IG waiting for whoever wins this one in the finals. It should be an absolute banger for that one tomorrow. But for this one right here, these two teams are coming into the year with very different expectations. But at this point, feels like there's a lot of parity between them. It's going to be very interesting to work out which of these two is actually the stronger.
Absolutely. And, it's been a long, hard journey through the Demacia Cup so far, and very excited to get into our format explainer a little bit, just to talk about how we've arrived at this place. But, it's been a full tournament, to be certain. We've got stage one already eliminating 4 teams, eliminating 6 more coming into stage number 2. And now in the knockups, we're already down to only 3 more teams. So we'll be down to 2 by the time the night is over. Somebody are going to be playing up against the IG in those grand finals, and it's going to be the winner of this matchup here tonight.
And there's been a real discussion that we've been having throughout the entire tournament as to whether or not it was better to actually just get dropped in during stage 1. And it seemed like that was kind of the case. LGD obviously one of those teams that has had the full run all the way through, and if they make it to the final, they will have played in every single matchup available to them. It obviously didn't work out very well for the teams just dropped in right at the very end, AL and Top getting knocked out very, very quickly, not having a particularly good time of it on the way through. LGD disposing of AL very quickly, although of course remembering it was not their main roster. JDG, they've still been here for a while, jumping in during stage 2, so both these teams should be well warmed up. They've played a lot of matchups. They really know what the patch and the meta is at the moment, so this should be both of these teams at their absolute best.
Yeah, and if we could take a look at the bracket here, there's a bit of a chicken or egg question about those stage 1 teams, and do they make it further, or is it a fluke that they get to make it further because they were seeded below initially? Is it a benefit for them to be able to get those extra games in early? Are the teams that drop only dropping because they were low seeds from 2025 in the first place? A lot of open questions to be had there, and LGD going to be drawing those same questions like you brought up. They play up against anyone's legend in the first round. They get a quick 3-0, but that squad, that's not the world's competitive, LPL contenders, reigning Demacia Cup champions that you might expect when you see that name. They were running their B team, their academy team on the week, and so a quick dispatch from LGD, it's kind of a question of how much it means.
Yes.
Meanwhile, JDG, they're coming in with their new roster. They're bringing in Junja and Hongkyu as well as Gala. And these guys are looking like they take a little bit of time to gel, but they come up against Edward Gaming and they look very, very good. And it feels like they have kind of found their stride since that last loss to LNG in the group stage. They're basically undefeated since then, other than 1 game lost to EDG.
Yeah, it's been a really nice run for JDG after that group stage. Like you said, EDG, they were coming in with a lot of momentum, 4-0 during their group. They'd played incredibly well, and a roster that people had some expectations for. We're pretty excited to see how it was going to work together, and coming into the playoffs was looking really good. But the fact that they were able to dismantle them very quickly was really nice, and it also felt like we got to see a lot better of an overall unit. As you said, right? It's been a little bit for this JDG roster to really feel like it's gelling together, feel like it's actually putting together a showing all in. One of the pieces that felt like it hadn't really been popping off was Gala. It felt like he really needed to take a little bit of time to get things going, and all of a sudden, during that matchup versus EDG, he exploded onto the map. His Aphelios matchup specifically, he looked just amazing on.
And I'd even take it a bit further. His series is against OMG and BLG. Those are both 2-0s. He picks up 3 player of the games in those series. He's just been popping off as of late. And yeah, this lineup, Xiaozhu, Junja, Hongkyu, Gala, Vampire. Xiaozhu, the only one returning from any part of 2025, joining at the very end there after elimination with RNG. And now starting to really hit their stride as that brand new squad. Really feels like they come in here with momentum, and they come in here on paper as some heavy favorites, just with the pedigree of players that they've added to this lineup.
Absolutely, and it was a little bit of a surprise, right, to be seeing Gala jumping on in right here after he had, I don't know, a pretty brilliant year the previous year, and you were like, hey, as much as IG, it was a little bit of a disappointing year for them overall. He looked really good, especially during Split 3. He popped off in Split 3. He had a couple of massive games, some of the best pentas I've seen from anybody in a while. And so watching him come onto a JDG squad that had a really disappointing look during 2025 was a little bit surprising, but so far, he's been looking really, really good here.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And yeah, these bring up the stats from the BLG series, the OMG series, and how much he was able to get done there. That Sivir has started to become a real focus for a lot of teams up against him. Yeah. Has been able to scale into the late game and be a massive force there. And just as a dual scaling threat alongside HongQ, feels like where these guys have kind of settled into being the most comfortable. Just such reliable carries and so many individual pop-offs in a tournament where it feels like the marksmen have been a little bit on the quiet side. Gala's been the exception, and Gala is going to be a massive player to watch for LGD on this series if they want to try to come up with the win.
And I feel like talking about a slightly quieter look overall out of the ADC, LGD, they're a great team to really highlight that for us. They have not been about this bottom lane really at all, despite the fact that this was one of the lanes that remained unchanged. You still had Xiaoye and YCX from the previous year, and they had overall looked pretty good. I expected them to come in pretty hot whilst the rest of the squad needed a bit of more time to gel. There hasn't been. It has very much been about that mid-jungle duo coming through for LGD.
Yeah, and so continuing on JDG for a bit here, the mid-jungle duo for them, it's going to be kind of a story of two mid laners here, both of these guys with really, really massive performances over the course of the prior series, right? They're coming in with multiple player of the game performances. HongQ, a huge factor in the back 3 games of the EDG series. And what you'll notice here is, despite HongQ being the young, exciting player, he's not a rookie anymore, but still very much on the younger side at just 18 years old. He's kind of been a lot more of the reliable, controlled player. He's been on the control mages, doesn't have a ton of, crazy, flashy individual moves in this series, but he's almost completely deathless, and he's able to just position and perform in these fights with an incredible amount of discipline that really puts JDG ahead of the competition.
You've highlighted it perfectly. It's the positioning that's been really impressive out of this player. In all of these fights, he's sitting right along the edge of danger, really not taking a lot of damage, but with these control mages, he's been buying up so much space, so much time for the other players around him, specifically Gala, to be able to step up. Gala's the kind of player that wants a little bit of extra space in front of him because he wants to go forwards. He doesn't mind getting up in your face. It leads to a lot of big flashy kills. It leads to a lot of deaths where you're like, Gala, come on, what were you doing here? Are you sure that that was the right decision? But when you get that extra little bit of space bought for you by your mid laner, that is really nice. And it's also something I think that Junja's been really good at for them too, just buying that bit of extra space for Gala to really feel unlocked. And that's been showing in their performances.
It really has been. And those two carries, both kind of representing those two different aspects of carry play, I think it's going to serve JDG very well coming into 2026. That's going to be the big emphasis point for this team, is the fact that they can be really impressive and carry through multiple positions, and having to deal with both is going to be a big difficulty for any team facing off against them. LGD going to be perhaps the first real test they've gotten here in a best-of-5 situation. I mean, obviously, the match against EDG doesn't mean nothing, but JDG were favorites there. They're favorites here. The question now is going to be, can they continue to play up to expectations? And, they could very well be the favorites for the whole tournament at this stage, right? IG waiting in the finals with some rookies on the lineup as well. JDG definitely are going to have the best on paper roster of the 3 teams remaining. The question is going to be, can they put it all together, and can they manifest those strengths that everybody's focused on so much? That said, let's check out their competition here. LGD coming in on the day with a couple of returning faces from last year, but also their new mid-jungle as well. It's Sasa, Hong, Tang Yuan, Xiaoye, and YCX.
Yeah, and as we were talking about earlier, right, with Zhao coming in from an eliminated team during split number 2. We've got OMG's jungler and RNG's mid laner. Both of these two get eliminated from contention in split 3. And they don't play for the rest of split 3. You end up with just sitting on the bench, waiting to have another big opportunity. In LGD, they come in, swoop in, and pick them up. And nobody really had big expectations right here, right? Tang Yuan had some interesting moments. Hung, he looked like he could have been a good player on a different roster. That OMG roster had many problems, not all of them hung. But here on LGD, these two have felt completely unlocked.
Definitely, and want to highlight the rookies here a little bit. The two newer faces last year to LGD, and how much they've been growing over the course of that last year. Like you said, not a super valuable year for LGD in 2025, right? They're not super thrilled with the 9th through 12th place finish that they end up with at the end of the year. They're never really contending for titles or international berths or anything like that. But they are developing folks like YCX and Sasa, who have had a pretty solid tournament so far and appear to be making these additional level ups over time. And that's what you got to be hoping for if you're LGD kind of undergoing this rebuild, entering phase 2 as they add Tong Yuan and Hong to the roster this year.
Exactly, and it's really felt like YCX specifically has been unlocked as much as Xiaoya's, playing like Xiaoya has, not really been too flashy, not been popping off so far that much in this tournament. He hasn't needed to because everybody else on the roster really has been stepping up to that next level. I'm thinking about YCX on his Nico. He had a just brilliant Nico performance where he just completely dismantled the entirety of the opposition. It felt like every single second that you stepped out of a brush, there was a Nico just sat there ready for a big 5-man pop blossom. It'd be very interesting to see once we get into draft phase whether or not that pick is going to go through. But I mean, we're going to have to keep talking about him, right? Tong Yuan had this sort of game where you'll be talking about it for the next 2 series they're going to be playing. He was just incredible right here versus AL.
Yeah, exactly. And, if Honky was coming off of a series where he showed his reliability and his stalwartness in the face of threats towards him and how controlled he can play, Tong Yuan comes in off a series showing how much of a playmaker he can be. This Rise performance, absolutely insane, just solo picking the Hong multiple times, and had himself a real nifty Silas game, too, where he comes away looking like he might be one of the more mechanically impressive players in that series. Just has so many really close fights, so many really great executions, so many great lanes up against the AL lineup. And LGD, if they're looking to level up this year, they're going to need that kind of performance from their mid lane. And Tong Yuan finally moving on from RNG, where he never quite lived up to that potential. He's going to be a player to watch under this new environment.
Absolutely. He had one of those Rise performances where I'm like, usually Rises come in and we're like, we just want you to play with a bit of proactivity. Plenty of Rises we see even at the top level of competition get into game, sit in the mid lane, farm up waves, and then maybe use their ulti once or twice to get away from a gank that they're experiencing just to get themselves out of dodge. Don't use it with any forward momentum, any proactivity. That was not the case for Tong Yuan. He was using his ult proactively too, but he was also saying, screw the ult, I don't need it. Flashing over walls, finding those angles. He was the reason that the team were able to win in that game too, because it was a game that was very close. As much as we talking about the ALB squad, it wasn't all of their main players or anything. They were still putting up a good fight in games 2 and 3, and both times Tong Yuan's massive play was able to turn the game back around and pull LGD through for that 3-0 win.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say enough good things about Tong Yuan there. And that the big question is going to be, can he keep it up, right? He's always been a player that was hyped up. We talked about this a lot when we covered him in the quarterfinal there, Bloxer. It's been a bit of a tumultuous journey for him, right? He's brought in as the inheritor to Xiaohu. He's expected to kind of grow into this staple piece for RNG, and he doesn't quite live up to those expectations. RNG maybe doesn't have exactly the 3 years that they were hoping to have with him. And now, new beginning for Tong Yuan here on the LGD squad. And I mean, so far pretty nifty, right? A semifinals berth here in the Demacia Cup and a shot at finals here if he can show up and perform up against, a couple of a PCS mid-jungle duo that is kind of new to the LPL.
Absolutely. And something I feel like we really have to answer, and we will see what it really shakes out to be once we get into the game, is how much do the previous wins from these teams matter? Because, yeah, AL, they put up a fight, but it was not their main roster. Yeah, you dismantle an EDG who did really well during their group stage, but again, versus the teams you're playing against, how much does that really matter? EDG did beat LGD during that Group A of the second round, so does that mean that you're definitely going to win here? How much of a favorite do we really feel like JDG are coming into today? They certainly do feel like favorites. They've got the on-paper better roster. They've had what has looked like a slightly more impressive tournament so far, but with the way that everything gets thrown up in the air and shaken up during the Demacia Cup, you can't rely on the nameplates alone. You can't rely on just the overall look of what this team has done in the past to really tell you how good they're going to be right now in this best of 5.
No, you certainly can't. And I think you want to highlight the jungle matchup a little bit here just to see how exactly that's going to play out. I think Hong has been having a real banger tournament so far, has been really impressive throughout all of LGD's wins. And it really feels like he's been the engine that have allowed them to get going into a lot of these games. And Junja has been a little quiet, right? At least compared to joining up with Hong Q off of that CFO roster that was so impressive last year, even on the international stage. I think a lot of folks probably feel like they've been a little bit underwhelming from JDG so far, despite the success that JDG has had. They've started to turn it up over the course of these last couple of series, but if you can stop that train from rolling along, and if LGD can show up, and Hong in particular can show up and put a stop to what Junja and Hongkyu try to get going, it's going to be a big angle for LGD to kind of find a foothold in this series and perhaps surprise everybody. I don't think it's completely out of the question by any means.
Absolutely. I think an LGD 3-0 would be the big surprise. Anything in between that, a 3-0 to JDG, all the way down to a 3-2 LGD, I think is a very reasonable look for these two teams. And if LGD do manage to pop off, it very much is going to be through that mid lane, through that jungle duo, what they can do together. And I think that means when you're looking at what you want from JDG, they need to dominate down in the bottom lane. Vampire was a very interesting player that we haven't spoken too much about. He had himself a very interesting, we'll call it interesting, time of it last year. WE's support, he had a pretty bad split 1, a very bad split 2 placements. I remember a single Nautilus game from him, which was some of the worst professional League of Legends I've watched. I think he hit every wall and not a single player. And I got into split 2, kind of counting him out. I was like, right, this is not looking good. I don't think that Vampire is going to be that guy for the team. And then him and Monkey popped off and were the reason that WE had such a good time of it during parts of split 2 proper. And then split 3, it fell off a little bit again, but still, anytime that there was success for WE and you found them getting things going, it was because Vampire and Monkey had such good play together. And if he can play really well alongside Gala right here in a lane that hasn't been so strong for LGD, that's a real win condition right here.
Yeah, the difference between playing for WE and now joining up with JDG and getting to play alongside Gala is night and day, right?
Yeah.
So, gonna be kind of the big prove-it year for Vampire, you've got to believe, right? He's worked his way up. Those performances that you talked about alongside Monkey put him onto the radars of some of, the big hitter teams. He gets to join up with this JDG squad alongside some of those hype prospects coming in from the APAC region. And now playing alongside Gala, there's no excuses anymore, right? This is where you get to play with some of the most talented players in the region, and you are set up for success, and you determine your fate. So Vampire, big year incoming for him, and one of those players, facing off against YCX here that we feel like on paper should be able to outperform, but another place where, again, LGD have had a good run so far from YCX. Maybe he can kind of turn this around, expose Vampire a little bit, and come next week, we're talking about LGD as a much more hype squad than they are right now.
Absolutely, because this is your run-up into 2026 proper. Yes, the meta is going to change, and that will shake things up majorly, especially with the changes that are planned for 2026. The shortening of the start of the game should change a lot of the macro that we've been looking at and what teams have really been trying to get going. And just the overall removal of Atakan should hopefully remove some throws, although maybe that's less hype for you as a viewer. We're not entirely sure how that one will really play out. But it is still your momentum, right? And we have seen historically that teams that do very well during the Demacia Cup, they at least hit the ground running during the beginning. So this is what you want to do. You want to get yourself into this final at least, give yourself a shot at the title, and coming into 2026, blazing hot.
And as we get ready to get into draft here, maybe something else to call out. One other factor that's changed for these teams coming into the semifinal compared to the tournament thus far is they're playing on stage, right? They're over there in Xi'an, coming live from stage, playing on LAN, rather than from their own facilities online, the way that they have been for the tournament thus far. It's a change in environment. It's a change in a lot of things for how you're going to be playing League of Legends. So we'll have to see if that affects any of these players now getting to step back on to the in-person stage as they come into the final stage of this tournament.
Okay, and an insta-lock right here for JDG, just going to immediately grab themselves the Wukong. We'll see what the response is going to be out of LGD. They have enjoyed picking themselves up their mid and their jungle very early on in these drafts. They have also actually been picking up top lane quite early on, even on red side, and been very happy to give the counter pick over to YCX or to Xiaoya, which is a little bit of an interesting wrinkle that the majority of other teams in the tournament haven't been doing so far.
Yeah, for sure. Tong Yuan going to grab that Talia up nice and early here, a pick that he has been favoring throughout the tournament. And they're just looking at the Scion for Sasa. No problem there, putting him on a bit of a weak side carry for the time being, or a weak side tank, rather, for the game. Now, going to go over to JDG for Phase 2. Junja already on that really well-prized Wukong. No Orianna or Rumble to combo with, but the Azir is left up for Hongqiu.
Yeah, and this has been a pick that he's been really enjoying, as we've been talking about, right? Control mages have been his bread and butter. I'm not surprised to see LGD taking away that Orianna from him and trying to limit him down a little bit. He's going to be more than happy to pick up that Azir. It's been his most played in the tournament so far, something he's been very impressive on overall. See what the final roundup pick is going to be. You'd imagine it would be a top laner, considering you've already seen what that matchup could potentially be. And you've still got quite a lot of the strongest picks available to you, including the Zaheen, which is something that you can take into the Scion. It has an okay matchup in the top lane. You can actually take the fight to a Scion, which is a little bit surprising. But also, we don't know how much they're actually going to play in their individual lanes. Both of these teams very happy to swap around early.
Yeah, the Scion certainly enables that playstyle very well, and I do think the Zehen, one of the better matchups to have 1v1 into Scion. I think Xiao Shu definitely going to be looking for that one. It's a champion you don't want to have to give too much attention to, but if it gets ahead, it can be really, really dangerous coming into these later fights with the fact that it gets a second health bar, as long as you are able to stack up that passive in time. Hong gonna snap up the Qiyana now, a pick that you haven't gotten to see out of him too many times. He's gotten a couple of plays on it throughout the tournament and was really good when he got to show it up against Thunder Talk way back at the start. So excited to see him on this one to combo on up with Tong Yuan's Talia.
Still, going to be quite risky though. You're very much looking to play around these choke points. Anytime you have got a big fight in the jungle, you're going to be in a big advantage right here as LGD. But fighting in these more wide open situations with a lot more ability to dodge away from all of the big ultis, all of the seismic shelves that will be coming on through, that could be a little bit riskier. And anytime you've got yourself a Qiyana in game, right, you have to get very aggressive early on. You need a couple of kills underneath your belt. Otherwise, what can happen to you is what we saw in the previous matchup that LGD had over on the other side. AL, they had the Qiyana, and you just didn't see any proactivity, fell behind, and then basically felt like it was tickling during the team fights, even when a couple of the big ultis did land.
Yeah, definitely a need to keep the snowball rolling, and that's going to have to be focused around mid lane, at least for now, as Sasa definitely on the Scion, not going to be the pick you want to try to play around. Eyes on what this bot lane matchup is going to look like. They ban away the Braum and the Aphelios on the LGD side to try to limit what options Gala has available. Gala's Aphelios on the list of champions that have been completely ridiculous throughout this tournament so far, so definitely want to limit those opportunities. Looks like a Yunara ban might be what rounds it out for JDG.
The Yunara has been such incredibly high priority throughout the entirety of this tournament, almost a 55% pick ban rate, so no surprise there that that one's going to be taken away. And this has been an LGD special. This has been something that they have loved to pick up for Xiaoya, and it's something that we, don't love the most of all the pickups, right? The Misfortune is very risky. It's the sort of pickup that you need to build a full team around. This is the beginnings of a very good team for it. We'll see what the final lock-in will be alongside. I wonder if YCX wants to move towards his Rel potentially, just for that extra level of lockdown, the real combo you can get between the Bullet Time and the Magnet Storm. For JDG though, you don't have to be particularly worried about the MF in lane. You don't have to be particularly worried about it during team fights, as long as you position well and don't get full caught in a big wombo combo. And I think that unlocks what Gala can really look towards. Gonna go towards that Varus for himself, and it'll be interesting to see what the actual build path will be. I mean, Poke feels like it is the best option in this situation. I don't know how close you want to be getting to any of your opponent at the moment, but obviously you can move it around.
Yeah, I like Vampire going for the Alistar here, kind of pre-countering that Rel that you brought up earlier, Bloxer. I think that was definitely the preference for YCX, but might think twice about it now, staring down the cow. Hovering the Bard for now, I mean, it could definitely hold some folks still to set up for a big bullet time. He might just snap the Rel anyway, though, and it looks like he will. All right, fine. We're going to full send it. We don't care about the Alistar facing us down. The potential to lock down Azir and Varus, just too juicy to pass up.
Yeah, as you're highlighting, right, it's a pretty big counter to have the Alistar. There was a while during Split 2 where, as much as people really wanted to be playing that Rel, as soon as the Alistar was up and available, they were just avoiding it. In this situation, Doesn't matter. It does not matter for YCX. He's going to pull that one out anyway. It has been one of his best look champions, and it obviously does work very well in the context of this overall LGD composition. So I'm not surprised that they have gone towards this, but we'll see if it ends up having a big impact, having that counter here for Vampire. Overall, I'm very happy with what JDG have been able to pick up for themselves. I think this is a very them composition. They've got people on a lot of comfort overall. The real change right here is the Zahen and how much you can really just pop off with this one.
Yeah, definitely excited to see what the Zahen coming out of Xiaozhu is going to look like, right? We highlighted Gala and Hongqiu so much, and then the supportive aspect. Xiaozhu goes a little under-discussed once that's all said and done. Can he, be more than just a tank player up in the top lane for them? Can he have some of these big pop-off games and be a tertiary threat for this team? That's a question that remains to be seen. As Zahen going to be a good opportunity for him to flex his muscles on a really high-priority champion. And with
yeah, exactly. That's the main thing for me right here. The Zahen is very feast or famine as a champion, as all of these very much get your heels in, gotta go fight, gotta get involved to really make the champion work kind of picks are. At the same time, though, he's been really, really good on it. This has been very much a Xiaozhu pickup. He's had two games on it, has been able to win both of them, and he's had some really impressive performances as well. Into the Sion, you also just don't need to worry so much. I think the counter here potentially from LGD could be just get out of that matchup. Sion's very happy to just be sat in a 2v1, and if you can swing a 2v1 into the Zahen, there's a lot less threat that he can lay down early on.
Certainly, I think LGD are going to try to navigate their way into that. JDG going to be looking for some early information to see if they can avoid it. Welcome to Summoner's Rift. Semifinals of Demacia Cup on the line. JDG versus LGD in a best of 5 to get into the finals and play up against IG. Lots on the line here, Bloxer.
Absolutely. This is one of those tournaments where people half sit towards it being for fun and half sit towards it really mattering and setting you up for the next year. I think all of these players are competitors. They want to win. There's no for fun aspect to it right now. And this one, especially with a trip to the finals on the line, is going to be weighing very heavily on their minds. As you said, playing on stage as well could potentially affect, although looking through the names right here, very few players that haven't played on very big stages. Specifically right now, JDG actually, their members Hongqiu and Junja, they've played on a very high stage.
They have. Now going to be that one-on-one top lane matchup that we said JDG we're going to be looking for. So Xiaozhu going to be pretty happy with that one. So he does get to lane up against the Sion, at least for these first couple of levels. Meanwhile, I think LGD doesn't mind being in the 2v2 either, though. They do have this early game misfortune, and Xiaoya already finding a very nice trade into Gala.
Yeah, Gala taking a big chunk of health out of him at the very start of this one. Does look like it is going to be the poke virus as we were expecting from him. And so for the early levels, before you really get any actual damage under your belt, are just going to have to sit back away from this matchup. Obviously, Alistair, level 1, level 2, pretty weak as well. So no surprises in the way this early bot lane has shaken out. Would be a surprise, though, if we really see any particular solo kills down in the bottom side of the map. I think both of these teams really going to be waiting to see where their junglers are going to get involved, what they can do. And the junglers actually starting on opposite sides of the map. So Junja looking to potentially get involved up in the top lane. And right now, with the push that Sasa has established for himself, could be quite vulnerable to a gank if Junja decides to bin off one of his camps. I think that's quite unlikely, though, so it's going to be a bit delayed if he wants to get involved.
Yep. Not the favorite target to go towards the Sion, as he would still clear out the wave afterwards, but this is where Junja finds himself, and not going to be too bad of a decision to stop by and get a little bit of lane advantage for his Zahen either, as both junglers do finish out their first clears on opposite sides, should both get fair access to the scuttlers, although you can see Tang Yuan already trying to kind of cheat his way up there to see if they do want to try to make a play. Xiaozhu, though, lands a nice hook in there onto Sasa to keep the trade alive and get himself a little bit of a health lead.
I don't know if you've played top lane into Zahen specifically, but it is miserable to try to play out that matchup. It feels like he has infinite healing, infinite jumps towards you, despite the fact that overall mobility, not one of the best aspects of the champion. It just feels so oppressive during lane. Obviously, this is a situation which Sasa, he's not going to mind that too much. The Sion always going to be useful during the later stages, but he does really need to be tanky in this game. As much as the Rel is going to give you some level of tankiness, you don't have any real survivability elsewhere. You've not got a slightly tankier jungle. You don't have a Xin Zhao. You don't have a Wukong in the jungle. You don't have something like the Ryze or the Galio mid lane that can also do some of the absorbing of damage for you. So as much as, yeah, it's a Sun and you don't mind falling behind a little bit, I think Sasa having a decent early game for himself, certainly not dying, is going to be critical for LGD's success later on in the game.
Absolutely will. Just needs to be able to keep himself up and even at the very least, not let Xiaoshu run away with the lane too much either. Definitely going to be a boon to his team to be able to keep that Zehen under control. Vampire stepping up aggressively in the bottom lane here, going to be able to interrupt that crash down from YCX, and that's just why you value this Alistar so highly. Nice shuffle, lands on a Hongq, doesn't quite find the stun, but the poke damage is there from Hong. Tong Yuan flashes forward, Hongq builds up the shield, flashes away, and picks up first blood. Hong is finally able to finish the job, but what a play from Hongq.
Hongq just surviving, manages to get the extra flash out as well. And yeah, he dies in the end, but he still has that teleport to get himself back into lane, so really not going to be losing out onto anything particularly. And Tong Yuan had already teleported back into lane, so he's not even going to be able to fully crash this wave through, just handing good wave position over to Hongq as well.
And a rookie superstar out of the LCP shows his face for the first time tonight. Tong Yuan not quite getting the flick back they hoped for, and that's the difference between this kill coming through or not. He's going to be kicking himself for that one, but what a use of the shifting sands to keep his health bar up and alive and finish off this kill.
Who shifts in right there? Who doesn't just try to turn around and run away? That's the difference that saves him. Now bot lane getting very aggressive. Heal even going to be popped for that extra little bit of movement speed. Vampire going to be chased out of lane, but is not really going to have too much of a threat to his life. Ginger maybe going to look mid lane, although Tong Yuan pretty pushback.
Oh, never mind. Shuffles right on in. Tong Yuan already having used the flash, does manage to buffer in Weaver's wall to get himself out to safety, but I mean, great point on that bot lane fight there, Bloxer. I want to call out, Gala appears to have flashed in that engagement.
He did. He did. As we cut to it, we weren't quite able to see what had kicked off the initial part of that fight, but as you said, Gala flashing early on, that can be pretty big, obviously. Going to be one of those champions where you've got a lot of damage available to you, but pretty squishy overall. We've got a Drake available for both of these teams, and you've got multiple members of LGD hovering around the objective, although with Hung moving up towards the top side of the map, looks like they're not really looking to get involved on this one. A little bit surprising, but with the push happening in the mid and bot lane, didn't really have the wave control established to be able to start that one up.
So the Dragon will live for the time being, as still 1-1 on the scoreboard, but with those cooldowns from the Summoners still pretty much missing on many members from LGD, particularly the mid-jungle. I want to see if there's going to be opportunity for more plays to start off around this Dragon. Junjo would certainly love to hit level 6 first, as a little bit of a trade into YCX, but he's able to scoot his way out of there without too much trouble. And Hong working on that Dragon all the while.
Just buying a little bit of extra space for the jungler to be able to pick up this objective. And I think objective control is something we're going to have to keep a very close eye on throughout this series. JDG, they've been perfectly good at it. No real complete control over objectives, not really losing too much control over them. Whereas LGD, specifically in their previous 2 series, have had complete and utter control over these objectives. They were able to get almost every single Drake, all of the souls as well, in the matchup versus AL, other than in game 2 where things felt a little bit closer. And if they are able to keep a stranglehold over these objectives, if they're able to use their macro effectively to be able to keep this one up, that's a real way to be able to put that extra level of pressure onto JDG and potentially overcome any of the individual one-on-one matchup weaknesses you may have.
Xiaoshu finding a nice trade there, but the Bramble Vest already completed by Sasa, going to make him feel plenty good about how that trade plays out. Not too much health regen by Xiaoshu, not too much lost by Sasa. Junja going to start up onto these grubs as part of the extended cross-map trade for that first Dragon, but Hong is here and is looking with YCX to see if they can potentially find an engage angle. Will they try to pull the trigger here, Bloxer?
Yeah, do they want to go for this fight? Obviously, level 6s have been ticked across the board, so you could potentially try to get involved, but without any of that early priority coming through, JDG just going to be able to pick up all 3 of these. And you're just spending a lot of time right now as LGD rotating members up towards that objective and not really getting involved. Both of these teams are getting very close to the point in which you really want to be going for some fights. I think JDG specifically, now that they've got that ulti onto Junja, the Cyclone going to make it a very juicy target, any of these little 3-4 man skirmishes that you can potentially find. And so the next Drake could be very explosive. 3.5 minutes until that one joins us on the Rift.
Yeah, looking pretty good there, as will just be that exchange of objectives earlier on. The full 3 grubs going to feel plenty good for JDG. We'll have to keep our eyes on what they're going to be able to accomplish here over the course of these next couple of plays. Next Dragon not going to be up for about 3 minutes, and so far neither jungler finding many angles to get a huge advantage in these earlier stages. YCX up in the enemy jungle, but cannot quite find his way in onto the play. Have to jump on over there before Vampire catches him, and he will be able to do so.
And it's at least a little bit of attempted proactivity right here from LGD, but you're right, both of these teams playing it very chill at the moment, looking to scrap together the gold right now to be able to grab those first items. First items coming through, going to be critical for basically every single champion on the Rift right now. Honkyu going to be able to complete his Nash's too. He's one of the few who really needs to get to that second item to be fully effective. Everybody else gets a pretty good power spike at that first item. Specifically, both of these junglers are going to be looking to get far more aggressive once they do have those first items completed. Right now, the gold very even as well. A small advantage to LGD. They've just been able to get that extra little kill and find a little bit more in terms of turret plating and CS, but very, very even right now, 11 minutes into this game.
Definitely is. And going to be able to retreat away from that engage for the time being. Our LGD just sacrificing a little bit of control over this bottom river. Still plenty of time to go before anything is going to break out for this one. And Hong clearing his way over towards the top grubs, or where the grubs would be. We'll be able to just clear out a little bit of vision there, just hovering around Sasa, but still not trying to pull the trigger anywhere. Fearing Junja, who will come over the wall and find him. So they do just exchange glances, but not much else.
And gonna be a little bit of a delay onto the recall. YCX moving up towards the mid lane, could potentially have looked for a gank of his own, but Honkyu just gonna know that one was happening through the control ward and walk back away. Now a minute until this next Drake is going to spawn. Right now there's a little bit of vision right here for JDG pushed into the opposition jungle, but nothing too much to write home about. Both supports gonna need to head back to base, grab themselves a couple of extra wards and really set up the vision. Vision is going to be critical for both of these teams, but I think specifically for JDG, when you're playing into an LGD composition that controls these choke points so well, you need to be very careful to not get caught out in a pocket of darkness, because you will get punished very quickly.
Definitely. So we're going to find ourselves with another engage coming through onto Xiaoya. Honkyu shuffles him back, almost finishes him off, but can't quite get the job done.
Not quite going to be able to get through that last little bit of shielding right there, but it is going to take a reset out of Xiaoya, and he's now going to be late to the setup of this objective. Something you don't really want to have happen with your misfortune. Hong as well got a chunk of damage taken out of him. So a lot of the members of LGD going to have to be a bit careful trying to step up right here. It looks like JDG are going to have full control over the pit right now for when this Drake spawns, and Hextech, such a good Drake to get individually.
All right. Oh, going to still be posturing around this on both sides. The push in bottom lane for Gala and Vampire, feeling good for them and their ability to join on up. But Tangyuan with control over mid. They are going to be able to move forward. Junja going to get knocked away. Or sorry, that was just the clone. Tangyuan still finding angles to chuck through some rocks.
Ooh.
Here comes Tangyuan into the bottom lane, going to move forward on towards Vampire, goes into the Unbreakable Will to be able to keep himself standing for a little bit longer, and is managed to escape with the flash. That's some summoners down, but they still have a cow for this upcoming dragon fight.
Yeah, but without that ulti, he's going to be a heck of a lot less tanky. Really not going to be able to step up anywhere near as far. Still, they're going to go for it. Teleports coming in from both of the top laners.
Junja flashes away from that seismic shove. Teleport in from Sasa. Dragon already falls down, but the engage comes through onto Xiaoya, and Honkyu will claim the kill. YCX about to join him as well. But they do manage to trade back on towards Vampire and Junja. It's going to be another kill coming through for him, but Sasa able to fall back underneath the turret. Shu with the fully stacked up passive going to be able to back himself away in time.
Yeah, Cultivation of War was just coming straight on through for him right there. But the Grim Deliverance was massive, flashing over the wall. It looks like they're still going to go for this. Shove back. Yeah, Tangyuan should just be dead.
Shuffled in, and there is a pickup for Xiao Zhu. But we traded 1 for 1. Sasa falls down as well.
And critically, as much as the fight overall went in the favor of JDG, the Drake was still picked up by LGD, so they are going to be happy enough to have come away with the main objective. Watch what Xiaozhu does right here, though. Flash straight over the wall, that Dark Englaive doing a ton of work, and then straight up into the Grim Deliverance. And at this point, he's fully stacked. He's chilling. He doesn't care if you end up being able to take him down, but there just isn't enough damage available either. And because you've got a top laner running, hang on, Sasa.
Oh, getting engaged on again, but flicked back
no.
away. Tang Yuan creates the space, and Hong picks up the kill. Nicely done by the LGD squad to turn that play back around.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what had happened there to get Xiaozhu involved in a 3v1 situation, and he is going to go down for it. Over on the other side of the map, Honkyu going to be able to take down this top lane at tier 1 tower, and the game, after being pretty quiet for the first couple of minutes, explodes right here. 5 kills apiece right now. Gold still very even as well. Now, with the Rift Herald up and available, looking like it's going to be started by JDG, Gala might pay the price, just about going to be able to limp away.
Gala pushed underneath that turret at half HP, and the Rift Herald is up and available. I mean, dangerous territory for old Gala here. Does have access to the flash. Tang Yuan going to be able to pick up first turret here as well. Some more things going up the way of LGD, even though they've already lost their chance at being able to get the Feats of Warfare. Now, moving over towards this side, YCX and Sasa trying to find a way into the pit. Is that Rift Herald still at full HP and still ripe for the taking?
And critically right now, Xiaozhu down on the bottom side of the map and does not have the teleport to get involved, whereas Tang Yuan was able to match him and still has the ulti to get to his team.
Flash engage from YCX. Junja locked on down. Here comes Tang Yuan with the Weaver's Wall. Gala going to be forced to flash away. The only death so far is YCX. Hongq was able to melt him down, and LGD can't find a way to keep the fight going. They lose out 1-0.
As much as LGD did have that Weaver's Wall available to them for the quick Tang Yuan rotation, they just weren't able to get him involved quickly enough, and JDG snap pull the trigger and get themselves that kill. Is it going to be enough to actually grab the Drake? Because Junja just going to have to jump away, is able to leave the clone behind. And whilst all of this is happening, Xiaozhu picks himself up another tower. That's going to be 2 towers already for JDG. And this lane control and the fact that nobody can really match Xiaozhu one-on-one down in the bottom lane is making things quite tricky for LGD.
Definitely is. JDG still doing a great job of funneling gold into their carries. They have advantages for Hongq and Gala. Hongq in particular been picking up all of these little piecemeal kills throughout the fights, whereas LGD entirely invested in towards Hong here. They need him to find these big, beautiful engages, and they have not been able to do it so far. And especially in that last fight, you can see they find a little bit of an engage, but they don't get any of their kills. They don't get anything finished off, and Hong can't make good use of that Kiana, so it's just a YCX death for nothing else.
And let's see if it's going to happen once again, though, as JDG start themselves up the Herald. LGD moving forwards, not quite going to be able to find that seismic shove. This is going to be a full 5v5 brawl, potentially.
Xiaozhu just walks right through, gets over there. Hong throws out the Supreme Display of Talent. They do get the lockdown on it too. Bullet time out of Xiaoya. Takes out Xiaozhu and Hongq. And while JDG were able to snag themselves the Herald, they can't get the eye. Forced out by LGD in a fight that they've already won.
Oh, that Supreme Display of Talent just on the very, very edges is able to clip a couple members of JDG, and the snap use of the bullet time out of Xiaoya is the reason that this has been his most picked and his most won-on champion throughout the entirety of this Demacia Cup. He is so good at just finding those angles for the ulti, and Xiaoya going to be able to pick up a kill right there. Like you said, the majority of the gold was going over to Hung, but he was able to pay it back for his team in that fight.
Really good stuff here. Vampire coming in from the top side. Now going to just be looking to play human ward here for a short period of time. While the rest of LGD do funnel their way in. I mean, he's spotting them. He did see YCX go into that bush. It's not going to stop him from face checking, though. Hong goes in. Unbreakable Will going to keep Vampire up for a little while, but if they just dump enough damage into him, eventually they'll get the job done. Xiaozhu, though, big ultimate, going to be able to pick up an execution onto Hong and step forward with the fully stacked up Cultivation of War. Xiaozhu and Gala cut through LGD. LGD like butter, and a quick 3 kills for Vampire.
Oh, as much as it was a nice quick little pick right there onto Vampire from LGD, it isn't that fast because you've got that Unbreakable Will popped and you're dumping every bit of damage into the support. That's a very nice situation to put JDG into, and they turn that one straight back around. The fact that Hung used that supreme display of talent onto only the support meant they had very little ways of getting Xiaoju back off of them, and this is a thing you can do with the Zehen.
Yeah, this is a replay of the previous fight here. Hong reaches out with his ultimate, doesn't quite find him, but they get the CC and the combo from Xiaoya, but they just as quickly lose the advantage they had built up once they get into that bottom side fight.
Yeah, I mean, the way that this is happening right here for JDG, as much as they seem like they're getting pulled around the map a little bit, they don't fully feel confident in some of these fights when they don't have Xiaoju available. The second that he arrives, and we'll have a look back at this one once again, it just completely changes things. I mean, look, you're dumping every bit of damage, supreme display of talent, every single bit of your focus is going down into a support that has massive resistances because of that ulti, and it just allows Xiaoju back into the backline. And the amount of damage he's doing, yeah, the cultivation of war stacking is nice, but 90% of that is he's just auto-attacking people. He doesn't even need his abilities right here.
No, not at all. He's just basically solo kills Xiaoya there. I know the kill credit goes to Gala at the end of the day, but wasn't Gala's damage taking that health bar down. It was those auto attacks from Xiaoshu. Really a great stuff from him in that last fight, and it does put JDG at a slight advantage across the map here. Once again, eyes on Hong to be able to find a really good team fight. Picking off Vampire probably doesn't meet those necessary those criteria.
It's something, right? It's 300 gold into your back pocket, but it still isn't going to be the thing that's going to win you this game. No, the thing that's going to win you this game, it catches onto Hongq and Gala, and that's been made a heck of a lot harder right here. Edge of Night coming through for Gala, so he's going to have that extra little bit of survivability available to him. He's also dealing a decent chunk of damage at this point as well, as you can see, right? Actually going to pop the ulti right there. Seems like both of these teams very happy to pop ultis onto supports.
Yeah, I mean, that's the credibility the Vampire's built up right there. He just walks in, and they don't want to pull the trigger this time. They know how it went the last time they started off a fight onto him. Xiaoshu, though, pushing up top side this time around, does have access to the TP. Will he pull the trigger to rejoin this Otacon fight in time? LGD have all 5 here already.
Yeah, but starting up the Otacon isn't a good thing. It isn't something you could just pull back off of. It's going to be shredding through all of their resistances right now, and it's going to make this a very easy turnaround, potentially. We'll see when the teleport comes on through, because you're also just losing a tower top lane. Now the teleport comes in.
Yeah, and it's coming right into the Otacon pit. YCX trying to mark Hongq, who could threaten an engage here. Now Xiaoshu arrives, full forces for both teams as Vampire returns from his recall as well. The Otacon returns to his pit, gets back up to full HP, and now we're just trying to exchange poke, but the Varus going to be very valuable here. Xiaoshu found up on the top side, loses over half his HP, and that might sacrifice some of the advantage JDG already had for themselves. Tong Yuan coming in with the Weaver's Wall, forces the flash out of Vampire, who now won't be able to use it to engage later on and is also at half HP. JDG just getting whittled down here.
And that is what the weakness is for Zehen. As much as you do a ton of damage and you heal so much when you're auto-attacking, when you're not able to currently auto-attack and get involved in the fight, you are very squishy. Still, this play is going to continue on. LGD and JDG continue to fight over the Otacon. We also cut to mid lane as Gala taking a tower mid too. So teams getting pulled around, really pushing the bounds of macro right here.
Hongq face checks isn't Tong Yuan, but Tong Yuan doesn't land the seismic shove. Now he's getting cut off from the rest of his team, already low on HP. Vampire locks him down, and Hongq will find the kill. Tong Yuan already out of the play, but here comes Sasa onto the back line in a 1 versus 4 for the time being, trying to buy time for the rest of his team. Xiaoya and Hong trying to pick off Gala, but he flashes back over the wall to be able to escape. YCX too low on HP, has to bail on his top laner. Sasa just getting poked lower and lower and lower until eventually JDG will find their man. They get both solo laners in the engage.
And that's just some bad mispositioning right there from LGD. Tong Yuan, he thinks that he can solo out Hongq, and sure, if he hits that seismic shove, he probably can, but missing it doomed him, and it doomed the rest of the team, as already at that point Sasa had popped the ulti, was sprinting on down towards the bottom side of the map, and there was nothing he could do other than to try to buy time. LGD, they don't even manage to find the pick onto Gala on the backside of that fight, and it is going to result in the Otacon going on over. This game's been very close up until this point, but this is now a big gold swing in their favor.
Really is here. The knockup found onto YCX right after the Otacon picked on up. He will be able to retreat in time, but that's not the real prize. JDG having secured that Otacon buff, getting that XP lead across the board, and will catapult themselves to a substantial advantage. You can see that gold lead or that level lead up to 2 for the likes of Gala.
Yeah, I mean, if you can just keep this one going on right here for Gala, he's going to be shredding through people with the Poke Virus. But at this point in the game, it really is the damage that Xiaozhu is doing when he gets involved. You just need to find him that backline access. Still, it doesn't seem like LGD are cowed in any way. They're going to start up this Drake. This will be Soul Point if they can grab it.
Sauce up on the front line. Vampire going to look for the engage. Goes through the rocks, though. Finds himself locked down in pretty quick order. The Chains of Corruption doing a lot to create the space, though. Hong Q throws himself in. Gets only YCX. And now the bullet time laid down right on top of him. Hong Q with nowhere to go. About to lose his life to Sasa's damage. And will get the mid laner. But Jala going to be able to get the trade right back. Xiaoshu still at a high enough health total. And at the end of the day, JDG with more members, even though Hong Q fell.
Yeah, I mean, Honkyu, he was just the one sacrifice for what was overall a pretty good fight from JDG once again. As much as it didn't result in as many kills as they were looking at previously, they managed to bring the Drakes back to 2 apiece. And this fight, just watch again what you're able to go in and do on the back end of this fight with the Zehen. He's just getting involved and stopping Hung from being able to do any damage, stopping Tongguan from really being able to step up because he knows if he does step a little bit further forwards, he's just going to immediately get jumped, has to flash away right there. Really, this bullet time just saves what should have been an overall terrible fight for LGD. I think they really need to rethink the way that they're approaching these team fights. This is now 3 fights in a row where LGD have arrived first. They've set themselves up first, which you do think is the right decision. But then they start the objective and get pulled around in these fights. They're not protecting themselves from the flanks in any way. They really need to find a way to turn back onto Xiaozhu when he tries to flank, burst out what is a pretty squishy Zaheen without any support, and then turn it into the rest of the fight.
Indeed. And they can't find those kinds of favorable fight angles. It's just going to continue to get tougher and tougher. I mean, Hongq bets it all on that engage, and it's kind of the worst case scenario, right? He loses his own life. He only gets YCX, and yet JDG still went out the fight because of what they've been able to set for themselves there, and because of the fact that it's really Vampire dictating when and where the fights start. Really good move on the Alistair there, despite the fact that the rocks were in the way. Just forces an engage through anyway, and LGD, without that extra layer of defense, just don't seem to be able to manifest themselves a favorable fight from the positions they're taking.
I mean, at this point, LGD, if you can step up in a situation where the fight is actually favorable for you, you've got a ton of damage available to you. Hung right now has got 3 items completed. He's going to be ripping through people. Xiaoya has had to divert a little bit to try get himself a little bit of extra anti-heal, and that is going to very much help with dealing with Xiaozhu. And still, the damage is really going to be coming through once that LDR is completed. And once you are in a spot where you've got those 3 items right here onto Xiaoya, you can really just look for one big engage, one big angle. This is the joy of a wombo combo team fight composition, where all you need is that one big fight where everything lines up and you're able to hit all of your damage at once, and you can rip through JDG.
And for that situation to manifest, we need a fight where the Hong isn't where Hong isn't marked the entire way through. The Kiana or Hong, not separate player. The Hong. Always
entirely
fun with all of our Hongs.
The Hong.
Always fun hanging out with all our Hongs in the league here, but this time around, Hong on the Kiana needs to be the one to show up and have a big Supreme Display of Talent, named aptly. So far, been constantly finding Vampire Junja in his way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good job overall from JDG, the way that they've been able to just get involved and constantly be so annoying. We wondered whether or not YCX was actually going to go towards the Rel because of the counter of the Vampire Alistair, and it seems like maybe it wasn't quite the right decision. Vampire has been all over this game and has been just really impressive overall. Like you said, disrupting every single engage that LGD has really been looking for, and also just baiting people in. Yeah, he died in that play earlier on, but it didn't matter. Every single bit of damage from LGD had already been blown. And now, can you step up? Can you actually make enough damage stick to some of these key carries? I mean, Gala hasn't even died yet.
That was a flash engage from Vampire. Hong throws out the Supreme Display of Talent and connects with nothing. So ultimates exchanged between
Oh,
Vampire and Hung,
YCX.
although there will be a flick back found up on the top side. Meanwhile, engaged onto Xiaoya. Gala going to be able to finish him off. And again, on fights on two fronts, it's JDG that are the only ones to find a kill. They move right onto the Baron.
YCX flashes forwards, Magnet storms his way in, and tries to get that play started, but they just don't have the follow-up damage. There's too much long-range damage coming through from JDG. LGD, though, they're not going to allow this Baron to go without a fight, bringing all the members in, teleports being blown from both teams.
Hung with the flash and with the smite has a possibility to be able to steal here, but there's another engage found by Xiao Shu, pulls back in two, and will clean up one. Into the middle of the fray goes Sasa, just trying to threaten Junja here, knowing the jungler's low on health. An attempted steal will not be found. Junja gonna be able to secure the Baron, and now Hung left up way too far with no paddle. Xiao Shu and Vampire trying to chase him down. Gala will finish off Sasa on the opposite side, and JDG secure themselves another objective.
It was back and forth. It was messy. 14 minutes into this game, it felt like LGD had themselves a chance, but things turning around all of a sudden. Xiaoya actually should be able to turn this one back. The Golden may save Hongq in this situation. One more auto. Nope. Both players are going to walk away and survive. The tower not going to be so lucky, and the Sun Disc going to be popped as well to really dissuade anything too much of a re-engage from LGD. Low health bars for the JDG members, but they're going to be sitting on a ton of gold right now. We'll jump into a replay to kick this one back off. Which play are we involved in? Right, this is the mid lane play that we saw come through. Really nice right there from Gala, landing those chains of corruption. And yeah, as much as you've already self-CC'd with the bullet time, just stepping out of it, going to be able to fully pull that one through. And at that point, you've kind of ruined the play that you were otherwise trying to set up right here. Still, I thought this was going to be a steal. I really did. This looked like Hung was set up perfectly to take this Baron away.
Yeah, I mean, really good play by Sasa here. Heads up, noticing Junja's health bar and forcing him out, but a flash smite perfectly timed by Junja will secure the Baron for the squad and silence any attempt at a turnaround comeback here. But here's another fight attempt. Sasa charging forward, only going to slow down Vampire. Knock back into the fray, tries to flash away, but he's just getting hammered by three members of JDG. And Hongq gonna make it 4 one-shots Xiaoya with the Shurima shuffle, and Tang Yuan will not last long in the face of Gala either. JDG wipe 3 off the map. Hong still hasn't respawned from the last fight, and JDG are going to look to just slam the door shut and take game number 1.
It's a massive fight right here from JDG, punishing the LGD mistakes. Desperation plays will not work out, and JDG move themselves one step closer to the Demacia Cup finals right here. What a game from them. It was pretty close the first 15-20 minutes, some back and forth, but it felt like after that play where there was the attempted kill onto Vampire, it ruined LGD's game, and they never got back into it.
And that play on a Vampire was the closest thing to Hong's Qiyana getting to really take control of the game that ever really happened, right? When you see these really strong pop-off performances from the Qiyana, they start snowballing, they get the gold lead, Hong accomplished those steps, but then they're always lurking in the darkness, picking off whoever happens to be unlucky enough to face check into them, making these big picks, creating disadvantageous situations for the opponent, and it just never gets to manifest there. He's constantly marked by Junja or Vampire basically the entire game.
Absolutely. This was overall a really fun, explosive game out of JDG, and I think Xiaoyu deserves a lot of credit for the way he was able to play this as a hen. He was constantly finding those flank angles into the backline. I do put part of the blame of that onto LGD. It didn't feel like they know how to respond to somebody flanking them, which honestly is the sort of thing that a team at this level really should be able to deal with. You can see not really a particularly big LPL goal graph, just a nice overall move towards victory. But Gala as well, unkilled throughout that game, despite the best efforts of LGD. They kept throwing members at him, and he was just solo killing people out. I mean, he was just stood there. There wasn't even much kiting happening in a lot of situations. He's like, no, I know I deal more damage than you. One more piercing arrow to the face, and goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, Gala, of course, we talked about him in the pre-show, been one of the best performing AD carries, perhaps the best performing AD carry in the tournament so far. And he gets onto the Varus, a super high priority pick. Ban rate through the roof on this one, up against a wide variety of players, many of them not with the pedigree that Kala brings to the table, and he shows it there. getting to see back over the way to this beginning fight too. We kind of let it fall by the wayside, but a really strong game from Hong Q2, really
Yeah.
playing to the edge in so many situations.
And it was just overall, again, as we've been talking about, right? That level of control that you constantly have. Always threatening with that Shurima shuffle. Always stood just on the very edge, dealing the damage that you needed to. You had a pretty long-range, pokey kind of composition right here out of JDG, and they were playing it very effectively until the point at which Zhaozhou arrived, got them into the backline, and then they just pulled the trigger and went. And there was no hesitancy, it felt like, out of JDG. They knew when they were strong enough to just go in and rip through people. I think in this game, it is very likely that it's going to be one of Zhaozhou or Gala that ends up picking themselves up that MVP. I think a sneaky MVP for me would be Vampire. I think Vampire had complete control over this game, and you highlighted it perfectly halfway through. He was just such a body blocker for any of the engages that LGD were trying to make happen.
Yeah, and that just bit them fight after fight after fight, despite having pretty strong front line. You could see in some of those middle fights, Sasa lasting forever in like 1v3, 1v4 situations, but it's always after the fight has already been set on terms that are unfavorable for LGD, and then JDG just finished them right off. Here's another flash short from Hong Q, by the way. Really great game out of this guy, and they give him the player of the game as well.
Okay.
I would say deserved there, right? So disciplined in his use of so many of his abilities and summoners as well. You saw it from that shield in the first fight. Towards the end there, you'd see he got to force the flash out of Xiaoya and was able to hold on to his own in the same moment, despite both of them falling to below just a couple hundred HP. Another classic Azir game from the young prodigy in the mid lane.
Absolutely, and now looking on to the next game right here, LGD, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. They've just been handed their first loss on the Misfortune. They've had a lot of their favorite champions now taken away from them, and they're really going to have to find a way to step up in this next game. I think either you need to lean more heavily into just finding these mid-jungle duos that can get explosive, get some plays going, because it felt like that was overall a very quiet game out of Hong. He wasn't actually able to get things going in the way you really did want to, or maybe trade the fight to Gala. He can't remain deathless throughout this entire series. You can't let that happen, and so far he really was just chilling the entire game.
Yeah, Hong, as you were saying, has been such a big go button for this team. He's been the engine through which LGD run. We're going to need to see him, rev up a little bit more as this series goes on if we're going to see a little bit more competitiveness as we go on. We're going to run it to a quick break here in a moment, but first things first, I do want to shout out the coffee. If you'd like to support LPL English, consider becoming a coffee member. Coffee is the best way to support the LPL English project, since the vast majority of your contributions will go directly to the show. A lot of the initial payments go into upgrading the broadcast, but a huge bulk of it pays on-air talent and content creators. Subscribe to our coffee, linked in the chat, to unlock perks like early access to content and the ability to ask interview questions for our unique on-site interviews. Always appreciate that support for this project.
Absolutely. Anything that you can give would be really helpful. I mean, there's so many people behind the scenes that make this product work, and thank you so much to all of them as well. Like I said, we've got a really exciting game coming up. I can't wait.
Welcome back, everybody, to tonight's broadcast of the Demacia Cup semifinals here on LPL English, where JDG find themselves up 1-0 after a game that was back and forth up until it wasn't, Bloxy.
Oh yeah, exactly. 50 minutes into this game and we're like, okay, 1 or 2 kills, an attempted dive mid lane that kind of works, kind of doesn't. Honkyu's able to pretty much stop that one from happening, and everything else was a situation where JDG and LGD arrived to a team fight, looked at it, and went, actually, no, until we hit 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, the game explodes from there, and it really comes out to JDG's favor time and time again. The main points were that Gala just wasn't getting killed, and that Zhaozhu was getting into the backline and just ripping through people. Now, whether or not this is a strategy that you can repeat, we will have to wait and see. I feel like that playstyle was pretty specific to a Zehen and maybe a couple other champions, right? If you want to take yourself the Jax, maybe you can play like that. Otherwise, we're going to have to see JDG show us a little bit of a different playstyle in the second game.
Yeah, we certainly are. So we'll have to see what he can show for us over the course of the rest of this series. I need to see the jungle step up for LGD, right? Hong needs to be able to have those sorts of performances that allowed LGD to get to this point, right? He had some really, really impressive games on the carries, but also the not-so-carries of the world, right? Just playing Nocturne in an Nocturne comp. Of course, Orianna's been banned away so far, but could start to see some of that. The Xin Zhao has been the classic. He's obviously not going to be able to get the Wukong because it is now going to be fearlessed out, at least until a potential game number 5. But there's still so many options left for him to bust out, and it just feels like the Qiyana is not the kind of play style that has been optimal for this LGD run so far.
No, it feels like the champions that he's been best on are ones that he can either buy a little bit of extra space for, or where he can just blow you up. And the Qiyana, it really can blow you up, but you need to do a lot of setup work for it during the early stages of the game, and he never really did that. He tried for one-ish gank into the mid lane. It didn't actually work out very well for them, and there was no real repeat ganks. There was no trying to get involved bot lane. There was no trying to get involved top lane. It was very quiet overall. We'll see if he does end up playing the Jace. That's been the other explosive champion that he's really enjoyed playing, and that he has looked overall very good on. He had one game a couple matchups ago where he just completely took over a game. I mean, he was flashing into the backline. He was all over that one. Whether or not he's going to be able to replicate that versus a better opponent in JDG, we will have to wait and see. Otherwise, I'm very happy to see him on something like the Malphite, potentially. Something that's just setting up the other champions in the game for success, potentially unlocking Sasa as well, because he was very quiet in this game. As much as he was playing, I think, a pretty competent Scion game, there's only so much you can do with the Scion when the rest of your team isn't doing so hot.
Well, here's the other thing, right? The pocket pick, right? Hong's Zyra. Hong is the only person in this tournament playing Zyra. Yeah. He's drawn a ton of bans on it. He's only gotten to pick it once, and it didn't look that good. But the fact that it's getting so many bans,
yeah,
it's got to mean something, right? At the very least, it means the teams aren't very prepped for it, and they don't feel comfortable playing up against it. JDG let it through in game number 1. Obviously, in the face of the Qiyana, LGD prioritized that. But as a full Fearless best of 5 continues onward and you start scraping the bottom of the barrel for jungle picks a little bit more, I wonder if we're going to get to see that out of Hong as the night goes on.
Could potentially end up happening for us, and that would be very exciting. We jump on into the draft of the second game right here, and looks like the beginning bans are going to be very similar. LGD just going to take away that Malphite as well, something we had talked about potentially being exciting, and there goes the Jace. So we're getting quite a lot of focus coming through right here onto these jungle pools. In terms of good junglers that you're really being left to at this point, I mean, in terms of the explosive ones, there isn't really so much really available to you right now. It's a lot more of the tanky ones available, unless you want to go towards something like the Pantheon potentially, but that has had all of its clear speed gutted right out of it.
Yeah, surprised to see LGD, ban away the Xin Zhao, ban away the Malphite. These are the kinds of picks we were talking about seeing out of Hong, but not going to be available this time. The Jace going to be permabanned on red side as per normal, and JDG going to keep those Orianna and Rumble bans, even with the Qiyana off the field, just saying we do not want to have to deal with this sort of AoE teamfighty play style from your solo laners. And there will be the Rumble locked on in. So LGD with their first pick of the litter post-Fearless Game 1.
See what they're going to be moving towards. As we were talking about previously, they really like to pick themselves up their top lane and their mid lane. Those are the two that they really like to grab during the first phase. They like to leave the bot lane until later on. That can happen slightly less on their blue side pickups, though we will have to see. Looks like they are just going to slam in that Tongyuan Rise. and that was the champion that he was most impressive on in their matchup versus AL. He completely took over that game number 2, was flashing over wall, was just finding those angles, and he was finding angles onto the opposition ADC that I think would be very useful if he can replicate that in this game. If he can flash and find Gala right here, there you go. Now you've got a way to actually get that access going.
Yeah, Tangyuan fresh off a very, very impressive Rise game, right, in their previous series. But here's the Anivia, the talk of the town for Hongq, snapped on up as his pick de jour up against the Rise. He's picked it up against Rise before, and any of these non-dashing, immobile champions just hate to play up against Anivia. You just get a wall thrown down in your face, and you're stuck inside the Glacial Storm for forever. And on top of it, Gala gets his Aphelios. Oh boy, JDG.
Yeah, this feels like JDG have really just been allowed everything that they could have possibly wanted from this game so far. As you said, right, the Anivia undefeated on this at the moment. Hasn't picked it up so many times, but then again, JDG haven't actually played so many games overall, and it's been something that's been banned away from him quite a lot too. I'm more scared of this Aphelios even, especially in combination with the Anivia. You push somebody close to you with a wall and now they can't run away, and the Aphelios just gets to open up onto you. That is going to be absolutely terrifying. Now, the lock-in will be the Pantheon that we had highlighted just previously. Unless that goes top lane and you put the Ambassador jungle, could technically happen. I'd be very surprised if we see that. The Pantheon really should be locked on into the jungle. As we're talking about, though, it has had all of its clear speed gutted out of it, so it is going to be way, way slower for trying to get involved. That's going to open up Junja to kind of play whatever he wants to right here in the jungle. You don't have to worry about constantly getting invaded on. You don't have to worry about keeping up the pace of the ganking anywhere near as high as you would versus some of the other champions that are available at the moment. Right now, what you need is just something that can go and get involved close to your opponents, because you've got all of your backline damage and all of that long-range damage already locked in.
Yeah, Xiaoshu going to choose to go with the Renekton as his counter pick up against the Ambessa, and it will fill that role you're asking for, Blockster, being able to play up in the front line against the line of JDG, or of LGD, rather. And here's the thing, right? We talk up how exciting this Anivia and this Aphelios is for the JDG lineup, but surely picking 2 immobile carries with 4 champions left to be locked in for LGD, like, surely you can counter this, right? And they go right into the Pantheon and the Ambessa to be able to do just that, and they're going to get a bot lane support opportunity to be able to continue to punish these low mobility options. JDG index into a low mobility comp nice and early here, and it's up to LGD to find the means to punish.
And they do have the beginnings of a composition that could make that work, right? Both the Ambessa and the Pantheon do want to go leaping into the backline. That can be a little bit worrying for Tangyuan if he doesn't decide to go flashing in first to follow. You can get left behind a little bit. That does make me wonder what it is that you're going to look to pick up right here for Xiaoya. Maybe you want to get something very aggressive alongside it. He has picked up the Kai'Sa, he has picked up the Corki, things that can, you know, follow up, get involved too. Otherwise, you're going to find something that's sat quite far back, and that can be left in the dust just a little bit. I don't think this is the game where you really want to be going towards something like the Smolder. Maybe he pulls out something like his Draven. That's something that Xiaoya is very, very good on. It's one of his signature pickups. A lot of damage, a lot of aggression early on if you do want it. Can be fun into the Aphelios.
Yeah, and here's going to be the question, right? Do we see a Junja jungler here? Do we see a support alongside this Aphelios? I like the decision to go for the Thresh, go for the Poppy bans here from LGD. Those are the kinds of supports that could really try to make life a little bit safer for Gala. Now it's really going to be on him and Hongq to have that sort of perfect positioning that we specifically praised Hongq for in the previous series to try to get themselves out of dodge. Obviously, there's going to be some support options somewhere, right? Maybe it'll be the Braum, some kind of disengagey sort of identity, but it's not going to be able to full-on stop Ambessa and Pantheon from being able to get on in there, and it's not going to give the kinds of mobility tools to these carries that something like a Thresh would. There's the Aatrox lock-in. That's going for Junja in the jungle, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely, and it should be really fun to see. I do wonder if this is just the Yunara angle. As we've been talking about, right, Yunara has been one of the highest pick ban champions that we have seen. This is something that I don't remember having seen. If this one's locked in, okay, wow. That's very aggressive. Yeah, I was going to say, the second that you pick yourself up that Kalista, it looks like it will be a Renata in that immediate slam. It's either that or going to be the Seraphine, and the Renata's just a bit stronger. I really like this. I think the Renata is really fun, and I love that they've been able to pick it up in this game. I do worry a little bit about the Kalista. Kalista nowhere near as strong as sort of any of the other top tier picks that we've got at the moment, but it does work with the composition we were talking about wanting to go in, and the fact that you've also now got yourself that ulti as that extra bit of survivability for YCX, who can then throw out his own. This should be a pretty fun composition out of LGD. I think they have kind of rounded it back up in a way that I'm pretty excited for. Still though, JDG, that is a JDG composition through and through, and they've been given basically all of their best picks.
Yeah, I mean, Callista hates to be slowed, though. You're gonna be in that Glacial Storm.
No. The Callista's not the point of this. Very specifically, you've picked Callista because it unlocks Renata. You do not care about the Callista. Now, is that a good strategy? Is taking your ADC and saying, screw it, a good strategy? We could wait and see, but the Renata is the point of this combo. The Callista's just there.
Sure. I mean, it better work, right? Because they're
Yeah.
now outranged by the Anivia Aphelios that we talked about being so dangerous on the first 2 picks. So they better get in there, and they'd better deal with those threats nice and early, because if they get to play at range, if they get to zone them away, if they get walled off and hit by Flash Frosts, oh boy, this is going to be a real tough game to play if you are on that side. So JDG already up 1-0, a little bit of space to play with, and with some of their personal favorite carries on those highlight players in Gala and Hongq, you got to feel like they're pretty confident coming into the second game.
Absolutely, they should be. The thing that should be giving them a little bit of pause is that Renata, as well as seeing Tangyuan right here on his rise. This is a pretty good rise game overall. You've got a lot of people jumping in towards you where you can just constantly be pumping out that damage. Full rotation combo again and again and again. And it's the sort of game where your opponents are probably going to play this one out just a little bit slower. You want a bit of time for that Anivia and for that Aphelios to be able to get online, where you should then be able to get your Roa and your Seraphs down. And at that point, Tangyuan will be unlocked to really try to make this game his own.
That is the goal here for Tong Yuan, to return the sort of rise performance that we got out of him in the previous series when he was up against AL. It's a tougher opponent here in JDG, but if you can rinse and repeat and show just what makes this rise so powerful, can tie up this series and make it a best of 3.
And let's see if we can get a few more games out of this one, right? We had a 3-0 yesterday, sending IG into the finals. It would be really nice to get a full 5-game series out of these two. I worry. I do really worry about this composition out of LGD. I love the Renata in this game. I really do. I think it's going to have some big ultis if you have the available option. But at the same time, you usually want your Callista to have a pretty good early game, right? You want to at least get things going during the early laning phase. She can be so oppressive. But into this combo between Vampire and Gala, I'm not so sure about this one, really. You know, you just, like you said, get slowed constantly. You should get getting poked constantly. YCX already losing half his health.
Yeah, tough start for YCX on the Renata here. Going to be the weaker harasser of the 2 ranged supports in this lane. And, I mean, Vampire getting the last pick, Lulu, feels real good here. Going to be able to buff up his buddy Gala for as long and as hard as necessary, and will be plenty valuable in the later game, too, being able to both play defense and sort of pseudo-engage alongside the likes of Junja and Xiaoshu.
Absolutely, and it's also just one of those
Really
champions. Hang on, are they just gonna? Yeah, I mean, you could just keep playing this one, right? This is exactly what we're expecting to happen out of this bot lane, and this doesn't let up. This is not one of those situations like in the last game where you've got a level 1 Alistar and it'll get better. It will. In this game, in this situation, the 1v1 is very likely to continue to be like this. In fact, I'm surprised that we haven't once again seen LGD attempt to swap these lanes around and try to go get themselves a matchup into somebody else right now, because this bot lane is going to be pretty miserable to watch.
Yeah, it certainly should be. And going to be just allowing Gala to start to build up an advantage nice and early here. You could even see on your mini-map, right? They're pushed so far back. Xiaoya has to take the recall. Minions are dying to turret. Gala is already, like, significantly ahead here. I think he didn't quite finish off that plate. No, he did. It went down, and it gave him right over just another free 75 gold.
Yeah, he's just going to be able to keep this pressure up at this point, and I mean, what more can you really do? Both junglers are going to be starting towards the top side of the map and working their way down towards the bottom lane. So there is the potential right here for Hung to try to get involved and go for a gank. But the warding has already come on through. He's also now going to have to just move towards top side to not get double scuttled, and that is just going to keep the bot lane nice and safe right here. Junja going to be very happy with the way that this early couple of minutes have worked out. And so, for LGD, how do you get yourself back into this game? It's odd to say back into this game, right? We're only 4 minutes in, but you really do need to try to accelerate the pace of this one up a little bit. Specifically for Hung, he just needs to get involved. He has to find ganks. Whether it's pre-level 6 is not so important, but the second he ticks level 6, he needs to be proactive.
And he's already kind of on the right track, right? Trying to
Yep.
play with Tong Yuan. Tong Yuan's been able to get the push. This is pre-level 6 Anivia. Honkyu going to TP back in to be able to participate in this brawl, though.
Nice.
And that smite does come on through. Junja able to secure it and walks on away.
Exactly as we were hoping to see right here. Just keep being aggressive. Keep going forwards. Talking of aggressive, holy.
Oh, jumping right in onto Gala. Gala going to have to
dead.
flash away, but Xiaoya's still on top of him. And first blood secured for Xiaoya and YCX. Bot lane matchup turned right on its head for LGD.
Never you mind. The poke matchup certainly will be won by JDG, but LGD, they recognize that and they go flying on in. Picking up that kill goes over to Xiaoya as well, so you don't even have to worry about where the gold has ended up. Full wave as well pushed underneath the tower is going to be a cannon wave, so you're not going to lose out onto so much of the XP as Gala. Still not going to be what you were looking for at all in a lane you were otherwise in control of.
Not at all. And I mean, that's going to equalize, right? Xiaoya now gets to hop onto that Vamp Scepter. He gets to pretty much not quite equalize the CS, as Gala will be able to pick up that gold underneath the turret, but does get him the gold lead, of course, and will make him a lot more comfortable. He actually refunded that Vamp Scepter and went for the Berserker Greaves instead.
Yep.
I think probably the right choice.
Yeah, I can understand it, right? In this situation where both running towards your opponents, running away from them is going to be massive. Obviously, also just really does give you a pretty big power spike right here on the Callista. The Callista we were talking about as not being the main point. I still stand by that. It's not the main point of this bot lane duo. The Renata is the thing you're really after. But hey, if you can get a couple of kills into Xiaoya's back pocket, he had a pretty quiet game in the previous one. It'd be lovely to see him get involved a little bit more.
And we did just see Tong Yuan tick up to level 6. I think this is a chance for him to really help out Hong in this early game and make some plays in towards these side lanes. Gala, now a known flashless target for a Rise Realm Warp, and really could just put him right in the dirt a second time when you have Rise Pantheon. And I think that's the plan that's breaking out right in front of us here. We very well may be seeing a Realm Warp before too long. Eyes on a potential move onto Gala. Realm Warp being channeled. Gala already stuck up too far. And there's 4 versus 2 in the lane for LGD. In an instant, Gala's down a second time. Xiaoya's 2-0.
I wasn't sure if they were going to give that kill over to Xiaoya or if they were going to pay Tong Yuan for his visit down into the bottom lane. It goes over towards the ADC. The only thing you're going to lose out onto is a little bit of push on the mid lane. However, Sasa is now going to get jumped. He's also got Honkyu coming on in. There should be a wall put down.
Yeah, going to go for the public execution. Gets onto Honkyu.
One more dash.
Now where are you going to go? Flash is over, fleeing towards mid lane. And Sasa will get himself out of danger while the dragon's secured.
This is a much, much better early game right here from LGD. We talked about them needing to be proactive, needing some level of explosivity in order to make this composition work. Well, they have certainly made that happen so far in this game. Going to get themselves all of these objectives, all of these kills, and jump out to I was going to say an early lead, but actually they haven't quite been able to. They've lost out on a decent chunk of plating and CS for all of these shenanigans, but I do think they're going to be more than happy with this one. Specifically, getting Xiaoya ahead should be massive.
Yeah, I mean, Sasa lost a lot of CS off that gank, but he's been losing the laning phase handedly even before that. This guy's down 25 CS right now at 7 minutes, 30 seconds. He's really feeling the pain that Xiaoshu's Renekton is putting out, and it's going to make him at a little bit of a deficit here, right? He's going to be much later onto the legendary item at this current pace, and if he's expected to show up to any of these fights around dragons, that's definitely going to be felt. But the Grubs likely going to be bot lanes rather than top lanes involved.
Yeah, it looks like everybody going to be rotating their way up. Junja actually going to jump straight over the wall. Hung is going to spot him out, although the quick rotation isn't going to come through from his bot lane. Now they're going to be moving on down. I think the first Grub has already gone. Indeed, it has. Junja should be able to grab a second one potentially here. Does smite it away and should just jump back out of the pit. Doesn't really have any more friends to be able to keep him alive for this contest. right?
Yeah,
No, he's going to
LGD
go.
should be able to secure this one. No, going to
Wow.
bail out on it. Instead, they go for a play on a vampire, but knockup's abound for Junja. Xiaoya stuck in the middle, does get himself into the bailout, but will be finished up before a kill is secured. Hong forced to flash out on the retreat. Hongyu uses his last bit of mana for another Flash Frost on a YCX, who barely stays alive for the retreat, but JDG, they get 3 grubs and a kill.
Oh, what was that, LGD? I'm not sure why they decided to play that fight out as they did. They were really reticent to actually fully commit to that engage. Fine, don't commit to that engage then. Instead, LGD, they kind of step back and forth, try for the play, maybe don't try for the play, are a little bit late to the play as well, and it results in them losing out onto two of the 3 grubs and a kill as well. Just not an ideal team fight overall. For an LGD that had found themselves a very early lead, they've thrown a decent chunk of that back away.
Yeah, I'm surprised one of those grubs went the way of Hong. I guess he must have gotten one of the initial 2, but either way, we'll be able to at least get one of them. But still, JDG, they should be so happy about how that early game has played out, right? The fact that they're able to get themselves onto that objective lead despite the fact that it's their bot lane that's been set behind. Definitely a win on both fronts for them, as still Xiaoshu just continuing to build up that lead, that 25 CS lead. It's up to 30 now, and it's just going to continue to grow for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. You're just going to be able to keep the pressure up in this game. You have to imagine public execution going to come through from Sasa just to try to get himself back away. Xiaoshu still has got that ulti available, and this is just a miserable top lane to really watch happen. We were expecting it to be a pretty bad top and bot lane. At least LGD have been able to solve their bot lane problem through a couple of extra kills. Still, only a 300 gold lead coming through despite those 2 kills isn't really the lead you would have hoped for from Xiaoya, and it doesn't really do anything to paste over the fact that Xiaoju is just all over Sasa.
Yeah, I mean, Eclipse versus Caulfield's Warhammer, who would win, right? Xiaoshu immensely ahead in items here, as well as just playing the better champion in the 1v1 at these particular spikes. It's been a really strong lane for JDG up there in the one-on-one, and we need to see LGD continue to play proactive, right? And make use of Hong and Tong Yuan's ultimates, have impact on the side lanes. It was a great start showing up at the bottom lane, and they're going to make a repeat move, getting flashes out of Gala and Vampire.
Oh, handshake not just quite gonna land right there, and it is gonna be the walk back away from the JDG bot lane. I love the attempt at the proactivity, but didn't really have enough members to make it work. Tong Yuan really is a big part of those engages coming through, the extra level of CC being laid down. He is going to bet a sandwich right here, flashes back towards his tower, and he's going to get himself out alive.
A good heads-up flash there from Tong Yuan, creates distance from Junja while dodging the Flash Frost. Looks a little awkward to flash forward, but it is the right move, and it does get him into a safe position. I think we're seeing a coach in-game comms angle right there, by the way, which is now enabled for the semifinals now that we're back on land.
Which is kind of wild, right? This is a lot of changes we're seeing. The blind pick coming through for game 5s as well. Just trying things different, switching things up just a little bit. We'll see what's going to remain for the regular season in 2026 and what we're going to get rid of. But I think coach comms in games is pretty interesting, right? It really changes up a lot of the play because you no longer have to have a decision maker actually on roster. That can be somebody external.
Absolutely. And you know, you only get it for a few seconds, a couple of times per game, so it can't be consistent, but see if that changes how these plays are going to make over the next couple of moments as LGD look to secure themselves this Dragon. Realm Warp out to safety. Hong left out to dry. Does manage to secure the Dragon on his way to death's door, though. LGD get a second Dragon in trade for their jungler.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I like that play. I think, again, that's the level of creativity you could get out of that ulti from Tong Yuan. YCX gonna get jumped in his own jungle right now. Handshake is gonna get himself out alive. Xiaoya takes a decent chunk of damage on the back end of that fight, but is gonna be able to walk himself back out. Still, look at all this turret plating. Look at all of this CS you're just gonna be missing out on. As the bot lane right now, there is some pressure onto a tower top lane, but it's not really at the same level.
Oh, Xiaoya forced a flash there as well. Hongyu doing work with these walls to make sure that the rest of the team can't accomplish too much. Sasa is going to get some solo plating for this, but of course, 4 members work through a turret faster than one. YCX trying to step up here, managing to dance around Hongkyu's abilities. Hongyu going to get pulled back in, but Hong doesn't pull the trigger and will not keep that Anivia locked down. They didn't think they could finish him off in time, and you know what, Bloxer? They're probably right.
Yep.
Turret will fall to Xiaoshu, and JDG will claim first turret of the game.
They would have lost first tower anyway, even if they'd have engaged, and could well have lost multiple members, so it makes a lot of sense to just back off in that situation. Tang Yuan was hovering around. Now they're going to go for a play onto Gala, get stunned up, and he just dead. Holy.
One shot there. Tang Yuan and Hong join forces and blow that Aphelios up. A 0-3 start for Gala. You said he wasn't allowed to stay deathless, Bloxer, and they are certainly following through on that goal.
Oh yeah, if you want to win this game as LGD, you've got to shut down Gala. And so far, looking so good. That's also going to be the rower now completed on Tang Yuan. Hong has also got himself that first item completed, so you're well on your way towards stacking up and being in a very strong situation to take over this game. Tang Yuan, we keep pointing towards him as that key member right here for LGD, and for good reason. His rise has been incredibly impressive. He has been incredibly impressive throughout this tournament. Couple kills under his belt, and he is looking strong. Still, it's these objective plays where I've been the most worried for LGD. They've either gone wrong, or they've at least lost a couple members when making them happen.
Yeah, okay, boys, we got nobody answering Xiaoshu at this point. You know you need to avoid the Renekton somewhat, but somebody has to be picking up some of these waves. I think Sasa was supposed to go down there, but had multiple recalls interrupted by Hongkyu's Anivia, and making life a little bit tougher there. Tang Yuan got to sub in to try to clear waves up against Xiaozhu there. Once his Realm Warp comes back up, which I think it is, and once Hong's ultimate is back up, I do want to still see these two pairing up, trying to make plays. The fact that Tang Yuan's on the wrong side of the map as the Rift Herald spawns, though, a little dangerous for LGD.
Yeah, he's nearly got that Realm Warp back up and available, so he should be able to come up and join his team. LGD have started this Rift Herald up first, and we've seen how that hasn't necessarily worked out in their favor in the previous fights.
TP from Hongkyu. This is going to be a full-on 5-on-5. They do manage to section off Gala on the backside. Rift Herald is secured by YCX, and it's Junja in the middle of everybody. Has to flash away. And now Realm War being channeled, getting them back over to mid lane just to clear out this wave and cover their bases. No trade made by JDG, and LGD plenty happy with the exchange.
I like that decision right there. You've seen multiple times throughout this series so far where Hong and Junjo in Smite fights has been going the way of JDG's jungler, and so rather than make it a pure Smite fight, just go jump him. Try to get involved there. None of the junglers end up picking up that objective. Like I said, YCX is the one that actually picks up the Rift Herald, but doesn't matter as long as you get it secured right here by LGD, and it's now going to be sat in Hong's back pocket, although that might not be a very secure place in a second.
Uh-oh, Hong. He did just see his red buff get knocked up, and now he's going to join it. Does throw up the shield to stay alive for a short bit of time, gets a little bit of health back off of Sundered Sky, but he will be executed. Junja claims the kill credit and will get the red buff to boot.
I don't want to be walking into that brush. This has been a very impressive game from JDG in terms of just the space that they've been taking up between the big plays, constantly getting involved in their opposition jungle. I mean, just look at where the vision is right here for JDG. It's pushed into both sides of their opposition's jungle. They've got a much higher vision line than their opponents do. LGD, they've got no deep vision at all. They don't know what's going on in their opponent's jungle, and it's making these small plays constantly go in the favor of JDG, and it's beginning to get together into what is at this point quite a decent gold lead, about 2k.
Feels good to be JDG at this stage, even though some of your carries have been set a little bit behind. A lot of that gold is on Vampire, who is 2-0, but that does get him onto some of these big spikes just a little bit sooner. The redemption, of course, plenty valuable here. And 10 seconds to go until this next dragon will be a potential soul point for LGD if they are able to assemble their forces in time. Hong has the ultimate, but Sasa's going to have to walk.
Let's see if they're going to go for another big explosive play. Herald going to be popped down into the mid lane. With the tower at only about half health, this would kill it. Although, yeah, I'm going to say Hong probably not going to go in onto that one. Instead, potentially going to try to use this just as a little bit of an engage tool. Not going to find anybody. Does he have the driving license? Does he have the skills? He does. Oh,
Oh,
no!
but
Oh,
he
he
doesn't
ran
have
out!
the range. Rift Herald slams on the brakes and does not collide with the structure, and now he's stuck with Xiao Zhu. Has to ult defensively. Hong is on 200 HP. He's already out of the fight. YCX is caught, has to throw down the hostile takeover to create the space, and it is going to be a free dragon for JDG. LGD, a comedy of errors.
Oh my lord, the Fate's Call just about going to be used right there to keep YCX alive. Oh, we talk often, right, about a defensive realm warp out of a Rise. Well, how often do you see the defensive everything being blown out of a team just to desperately get themselves away? Oh, that is incredible right there. Defensive grand Starfall to try to get back out. Teleport going to come into the mid lane right here, looking to potentially get a little bit aggressive onto JDG. No, just going to try to defend this tower. Oh, God, that sucks for LGD. That's all of the
It does.
momentum they'd built just blown away.
Yeah, I mean, the Rift Herald just not working out for them there. Plan A, crash into the turret. They have to bail on that one. Plan B, go bot lane. That plan goes sideways almost immediately. And you can see, I mean, YCX was playing down in that bot tri-brush, assuming that he was going to have Hong thrown far enough away from the Renekton to not get absolutely hosed. But the thing about Rift Herald running out of charge is that you just kind of drop right on top of the Rift Herald. You don't get that little bounce back effect, and Hong realizes that far too late.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, comedy of errors in that situation. Hey, it's very funny for us to watch externally. Internally, though, especially after you do get yourself a little bit of gold going during the early stages of the game, you get a couple of kills into a lane that was otherwise looking like it was going to be pretty miserable. That's great, and this really can just take all of the wind out of your sails. We'll see how the response is going to come through out of LGD. These teams, as we've been saying, right, small gold lead, about 2,000 gold for JDG. But in terms of just the overall objectives being picked up, LGD, they have been able to get the majority. This next Drake, going to be very important. 3.5 minutes until that spawns. There is an Atacon, though. An Atacon, that's where throws are built.
This is where throws are made, and no Rift Herald to influence it this time around either. Already see LGD grouping up together on Vision, at least on behalf of Hong, and Tang Yuan might walk right into Xiao Zhu here. Let's see just how beefy this Renekton can be. Tang Yuan trying to run away, going to find himself face-to-face with Junja. Flashes back over the wall, but now he's going to find Vampire. Here comes the rest of his backup. Gets polymorphed and cannot realm warp to safety. Xiao Zhu claims the first and only kill of the fight as LGD mid lanerless are already going to be dealt with.
Polymorph just ruining the plans right there. They are going to pay for it with a mid lane tower, and the Atacon is going to be started up. Now, as we say, Atacon, it shreds through all of your resistances, and now the response can potentially come through from LGD. Still, they won't have Tang Yuan. He has no teleport even once he does respawn. So is there actually any way to get in here as LGD?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need a pop-off from the rest of the squad. Here comes Hong, looking for the steal, gets polymorphed, but is still alive, going to be able to keep the fight going, trying to melt down this Atacon, and will secure it. Hong makes the steal, will be cut down by Gala right afterwards. Xiaoya's fallen on the opposite side as well. This fight is all JDG, but LGD, at the very least, managed to get themselves that Atacon buff.
Okay, that's something. That's something for LGD in a game that has been feeling like it's slipping out of their grasp, but more and more as the time goes on, at least they're going to be able to steal away that objective. Something that Hong's not really been able to do. His fights have not been on point so far in this series, but he's able to pull through with that one. Still, on the back end of that fight, when we take a check-in, it's going to be about a 4,000 gold lead for JDG. They've got first items completed on everybody, obviously, and second items well on the way. Second item is even completed for Xiao Zhu up in the top lane. We can have a look back at this team fight, but there's nothing particularly explosive or interesting about it. It's a 4v5, and it's just a mistimed smite. Oh, not even. It's perfectly timed from Hong. He hits that
really
pixel perfect to be able to grab that one through.
Yeah, it puts a bit of a tourniquet on the bleeding, right? LGD, still not happy with that situation. Tang Yuan, you don't need me to tell you you can't do that. but they do manage to prevent it from being an absolute game-losing mistake, thanks to some clutch smiting from Hong. And now the game gets played on, right? LGD not out of the woods just yet. They can still win out on these brawls. And, you know, that Otacon buff not going to be too shabby with a composition like this, where you are going to be able to benefit from those AoE slows and where you do appreciate the level advantage that's going to come with the Otacon buff.
Absolutely. It's not a small buff, nothing to turn your nose up right here for LGD. They would have liked to have won the fight on the back end, but at the point at which they didn't have Tangyuan to be dealing his damage, that was going to be very unlikely. Tangyuan is fully online now, though. He has let Seros completed the row. It has now fully stacked as well. So he is actually going to be pumping the damage. He's in a very good spot to be able to try carry the game for his team. The problem is quite a short-ranged champion. Actually getting close enough to really deal his damage is going to be a little bit tough.
Well, full forces of LGD once again grouped on up here. Tang Yuan going to keep the pressure up in mid and can threaten the Realm Warp. Junja jumps over the wall, maybe a little bit too far. Public Execution comes on away from Sasa to get the fight started. Here comes the drop in from Tang Yuan and Hong, but a big blast cone going to throw them onto the wrong side of the map. Xiaoya's dead, as is Sasa, and this is just too disorganized from LGD. JDG are going to cut them down one after the other. 3-0 to JDG.
All of the healing coming through from Vampire means that the damage from LGD just does not stick. It barely even tickles at that point. And that is going to be a potential final nail in the coffin for the hopes of LGD in this game number 2. Junja just survives. I mean, the amount that he's able to just keep on going right here is crazy. And that blast cone, it just saves Gala's life. I don't think Gala dying there actually changes the outcome of that fight, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
Tang Yuan just pumping out the damage here, gets a couple of spreads of the spell flux, but he will be melted out before too long. Does get Gala! Huge play by Tang Yuan to make this into a 1-for-1, and they're going to look for a little bit more. Sasa TP's into the back line, trying to get some redemption for starting off that last poor fight. YCX just keeping Hongq's attention. Will be finished off by one more permafrost, but Sasa is chasing him down, thrown into the egg, and walled away, actually. Might be able to get some time to get one more spell rotation off, but that is enough to get down Hongq.
And that is a couple of critical kills coming through right here at a key moment in this game. 25 minutes in, the Baron has now spawned, and LGD, they are sprinting on over towards this one. Now, can you actually take it? You're a 3-man squad right now. Tang Yuan will be up in 10 seconds time, but he doesn't have teleport, nearly has Realm Warp. I think you're just going to have to pull off of this one, and I worry that they're not even going to be able to do that.
Oh, Xiaoshu over the wall. Wanted to be able to get that brawl started. LGD making a wise decision, peeling off of that one, and JDG not feeling confident to just start up the play once again. Xiaozhu is an absolute raid boss, inching closer and closer to that flame horizon over Sasa, and it's just been the story of the game, how dominant this Renekton has been in every lane he shows up to.
Absolutely. Mid lane tower gonna fall here, likely. One more auto attack. Okay, just... no, never mind. One final shot from one of the caster minions will take it down. So that's going to be that extra level of safety taken away from LGD. Currently looking to try to get a little pick onto Junja. He's just going to be able to flash away, though, and the prison not going to come on through. That could be a key flash away from Junja, but you're paying it back for Tang Yuan's, and I think that one's more important.
Oh, Xiaoshu sees what's going on here, doesn't actually dash over the wall to get onto Sasa there, but that 2-level advantage plus whole full legendary item. Oh boy, that's a big croc and quite dangerous to encounter in the wild. YCX about to learn that exact lesson, tries to handshake him away, but gets stunned up anyway by the Ruthless Predator, and Xiaoya will be forced to use Fate's Call to pull his support to safety.
Just about going to be able to get himself away, but that is going to be the little bit that JDG needed to get themselves involved in this Baron. It's already down to half health. It's flying in.
Grand Starfall Hong
what?
Just throws himself into the fray, and he's out of there in an instant. Sasa picked off by Xiaoshu on the opposite side. I mean, LGD just gave this one to him. I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't expect that.
What? Yeah, Xiaoya's down too. I don't know. I don't know where sending it. It blocks her. LGD have lost. They've lost everything.
Yeah, the Nexus will be included in everything very soon. You are correct on that one. What? But why? Yes,
It's a great
this
question,
game.
my friend. I don't listen. I don't. You're the color caster here. I don't envy your. I don't envy your job, but
Don't put this on me. This, yeah, I know this is my job, but like, I, on the one hand, I do kind of get it because you have to get involved in this Baron. You can't just let this one be taken away. Otherwise, you're doing the same thing. You are just allowing the game to go over to your opponents anyway. We didn't even notice that Gala had completely whiffed his ulti during that fight because, well, we were also baffled as to what it was that the Pantheon had just done. But you are playing into a Lulu, and this pick 5 Lulu, this R5 Lulu has been massive for JDG. It has, again, just like in the previous game with the Alistar, been shutting down everything it is that LGD want to do. Every time somebody goes jumping into the backline, something this composition really wants to do, it immediately gets shut down. Because of that, you should know that as Hong and not be flying in with the Grand Starfall completely unhelped by the rest of your team. Maybe it's a miscommunication error where he thought everybody else had said we're going in and then kind of got left out to dry. I don't know that friends around him would have really helped though.
yeah, I mean, in a way, it's the same thing that lost them that previous fight around the Dragon, right? That one, Sasa pulls the trigger too early, and this time it's Hong. They're just desynced on all of these gap closers to put themselves into the fray. I mean, Tango doesn't even realm warp in that last brawl, and now JDG, Baron at their backs, massive gold lead as well. They're just rampaging through the base, taking whatever they want. YCX sectioned away by Hongq's wall. Big bursts of damage from the Flash Frost, gonna put that Renata down below half HP. Xiaoshu flashes in, gets onto Xiaoya, bailout, gives him a second health bar that's gone just as fast, and Xiaoshu is an absolute monster in the front line in this fight, cutting through each and every member of LGD. Over onto Vampire. Sasa finally manages to make a trade, but this game is done and dusted. Ace for Vampire to JDG as they look to close out game number 2 and put themselves on match point.
One game away now for a JDG IG finals here in the 2025 Demacia Cup. What a game this has been out of JDG. They really got control of it early on and never let it go. Truly an incredible performance across the board, but Vampire on his Lulu just completely ruining every single plan that his opponents had.
Definitely did there. Really great play on the Lulu. Some very, very important polymorphs to be found in that fight, but I think it all just comes down to LGD just never get on the same page with the engages, right? No. They never are time. And listen, the timing's tough, right? Public execution is pretty much instant, and it has to be a skill shot that you land. Realm Warp takes a different amount of time than Grand Starfall. It's tough to angle all these things together, but it's what you got to do on this composition. The fact that these players keep ending up in the middle of everybody with nobody else to help them out from their team, whether their name is Hong or Sasa, it really just cooks them the same way either way.
Yeah, you can see with the gold graph right here, that was even more dominant of a overall performance out of JDG than they had in the previous game. Xiaoju, Hongqiu, both of them all over this game. We barely said Hongqiu's name throughout the game because he wasn't that big explosive player that he is on a lot of other champions. You can't expect that out of an Anivia. What he was doing was just constantly laying down the damage. It was that blanket level of damage that meant you couldn't step up, that you were constantly slowed. Xiaoya not enjoying that. Tanguan as well couldn't weave his way around these fights at all. And unfortunately, the hostile takeover that we had spoken about as being potentially that counterpunch that was needed to allow LGD to find some of these fights, it happened once or twice, and every time it felt like it did absolutely nothing, unfortunately. The composition was very risky out of LGD, and they just never got on the same page. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, it just really felt like they had a breath of life there with how well Xiaoya was doing in lane, and Tang Yuan was a big damage threat on the rise, but I mean, Tang Yuan barely even gets to participate because so many of these crucial fights that take this game from a very close one to an absolute domination for JDG occur pretty much without his involvement. And the same can be said for Xiaoya, right? These are fights that are determined by the mismatched engages and not so much by how the teams are able to execute on the full-on 5-on-5. Mm-hmm. It's kind of just a game that ends in an instant when something like this happens at the Baron. We got the video right here for you.
Yep.
It's tough.
It's
to watch.
real tough to watch. Just moment of silence right there for the hopes and dreams of LGD in that game number 2. I guess the thing that's frustrating about this one is that as much as we keep saying they never got on the same page, that's a lie. In the first 5 minutes of the game, they did.
Okay, yeah.
They had one really nice map rotation that totally worked, and that gave me so much hope that this could at least be a competitive back and forth game between these two teams. Because if you can keep doing that, if you keep finding those picks where you get everybody together and go get them, that could be really fun, and that's a way to actually make this game a back and forth one. Unfortunately, the reason they weren't able to keep doing that is partly they weren't on the same page, but also partly, yes, because of this man. Xiaoju, for as much as he was awesome in the team fights, and he was, that's a big part of why he's been able to pick himself up this player of the game, he was just so annoying on the sidelines. He's side lanes. He's always taking a tower, he's always pressuring you, he's always making something happen elsewhere, and it means you can never go for those big plays where you take your jungler and your mid laner to a different lane for a gank, because you're gonna lose way too much on the back end of the fight. We saw it when they had that big play down in the bottom lane. They lost majorly up in the top side, and that really snowballed out from there.
Yeah, I mean, Xiaoshu completes the Flame Horizon over the course of this game, just absolutely taking this counter pick in the top lane and running away with it. Does so well in that one-on-one that allows him to be that massive raid boss in the later game and makes those fights so easy to pull off and lets him contribute to the gold lead so massively as an individual. Big game from Xiaoshu there, and showing that JDG might have that third threat on top of Hongqiu and Gala, this player that still, it's kind of the longest tenured member of JDG now, but joined so late in 2025 that he still might as well be a new face of the squad.
Exactly, they've had a lot of turnaround recently, and this would be a good bit of momentum for them coming into 2026 to be able to at least get into the finals, if not potentially win it. I mean, we've been looking at this side of the bracket as the stronger side of the bracket overall, the place where maybe we're going to have the winner of this whole tournament. And a JDG IG matchup in the finals would be incredibly hype. Still, we've still got one more game at least between us and that finals. LGD, I mean, they have still got things going occasionally. They just need that extra level of coordination, it feels like, to really pull it through.
Yeah, LGD and not quite living up to the dream so far tonight, but like you said, we'll have at least one more chance to try to pull it together. Let's see if they're going to be able to do it. We're going to throw it to a quick break here while we get the draft for game number 3, but stay tuned. We will be right back as JDG looks to close out against LGD. Welcome back, everybody, to tonight's broadcast of the Demacia Cup here on LPL English, where JDG find themselves up 2-0 after a strong game number 2 performance on some of the champions that are quickly becoming synonymous with this squad of 5. The Anivia in mid for Hongq, been huge for him all tournament, and he just put up another big game on it.
Absolutely. Very quiet, wasn't any big, flashy, explosive plays, but it was just that constant level of damage that meant as LGD, you were never able to arrive to any of your team fights full health. You were never able to move through them without being slowed, without there being a wall in front of you that was just ruining all of their plans. It was really well executed out of JDG. One or two little mistakes here and there. Gala getting solo killed bot lane wasn't ideal. Them getting ganked bot lane as well wasn't the best, but other than that, and that resolved itself very quickly on, it was great. It was a great game from JDG, and they have to be coming into this game number 3 with a lot of confidence right now. They are feeling like they are strong, like they can send themselves in a 3-0 to that finals and match up with IG in what would be a very exciting Demacia Cup finals.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's been a little bit of a quieter, game from Hongq, but feels like that's been all tournament, right? He's not the flashiest player in the world, at least this tournament he hasn't been. He's been happy to just sit on his control mages, play a controlled game, be very, very conservative with his resource uses, which just lets him always be safe. He always has the flash up. He never uses it when he doesn't need to. He always has those extra tools, whatever the champion has in the tank, to be able to get that last little bit of distance, that last little bit of space to be able to pull off a really strong team fight and put up huge damage numbers. And he'll do that on whatever mage you give him. The Anivia was huge for him this game and has been all tournament, and he's got so many in the tank. There's still Victor up. There's still Orianna up. There's still
hey, the Asol, if you want to go something crazy.
The Asol, yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of options left for him. He showed the Swain too. The Swain looked plenty good as well. Absolutely.
He's got a lot of champions left in the tank. What I'm excited for, though, is not even going to be the mid lane or the bot lane right here. It's top lane. I think Xiaoshu's had an overall incredible game for himself. His Zehen performance in game number 1 was massive. His Renekton game in this second one was obviously huge. Got himself the player of the game for that performance. And he's still got a bunch of his favorite champions up and available to him. We'll see if the Rumble keeps hitting the ban table, whether or not maybe we get a Jax or a Mordekaiser coming on through. And if not, let's see something aggressive out of him right here. I mean, he has been playing a very good game for himself overall, and I trust that either on a tank or on something aggressive, Xiaoshu's going to take over.
Yeah, definitely. And, Sasa, we need to see a little bit of a cleanup of the laning phase there, right? Just getting run over a bit by the Renekton of Xiaoshu in game number 2. I wonder if we're going to get to see Sasa on his signature Udyr at any point. He was showing it earlier in the tournament, has kind of let it fall by the wayside as the tournament has gone on, but I mean, it feels like this guy could use some comfort at this stage. It's 2 games in a row where he just has not been able to get going in the top lane, and LGD just need to be able to stop the bleeding in some of these side lanes where they have constantly been outmatched throughout the series, it feels like.
Absolutely. If these side lanes are finding themselves in a slightly more even situation, that's going to unlock your jungler. It's going to unblock the rest of the play to get a little bit more aggressive, to actually go and get involved in some more of these fights, as we really haven't been seeing. The early ganking hasn't been happening so far. Early bans looking pretty similar to what we've been seeing before. Interesting that LGD are actually going to be the ones to take away the Sylas. I do wonder if that tells us they're going to be grabbing some big explosive ultis early on that they don't want to get countered through. That surprised me a little bit just because we did see in their previous matchup that Tongyuan had a great look on the Sylas, and they're just taking another option out of his pockets. The Rumble is once again going to be taken off of the board. That champion has pretty much sat on the ban table the entire time. I mean, I think it's a 90% pick ban in the tournament so far.
That sounds about right to me. Would not surprise me, and it does get snapped on up and then fearlessed away whenever it is left up to. But here's that Malphite that you mentioned, JDG being over on the red side. They can only ban so many champions, and that might mean that this oh-so-prized Malphite could go the way of Hong. It's been rising up and up and up in priority throughout the entire tournament, and LGD now with a chance to snatch it up. They will seize that opportunity.
I will indeed, and I really like this. This is a pickup that can go into a couple of different spots. You can obviously play it top lane if you want for Sasa, or Hung can pick this one up, and I really liked it on Hung. I thought he had an incredible performance on it in their previous matchup versus AL, and it just unlocks the rest of the map to try to play a little bit more aggressive, because you then have that extra level of CC. Obviously, the last time we did see it out of LGD, it was alongside things like the Misfortune, the Rel. It was one of those big wombo combo compositions that you don't have available to you here, so I do wonder what you actually have left to really pair it up with. JDG, they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing, going to grab themselves the Trundle, and you wouldn't be surprised if you also see the top laner grabbed right now.
Trundle has been a big pick for Junja throughout 2025. Going to snap that one up for himself. Good counter to the Malphite in these team fight angles. And Gala going to snap up the Kaisa, kind of looking like JDG might want to play a little bit of an engaged style themselves, even staring down this Malphite.
Indeed, really interesting to just grab yourself the Kai'Sa instantly. Like you said, Malphite would usually put a little bit of a pause in picking yourself up an early ADC. The Kai'Sa has a decent level of survivability. You know, with the ult, you can jump away from that unstoppable. Usually you look more towards something like the Ezreal for that just extra level of survivability, but this should still be interesting. And LGD, they are going to grab the Jax. The Jax has kind of been hovering on the edges of play. It's been a very strong pickup top lane, and it does lock in that Malphite to the jungle. As a duo, you can get very aggressive. Now, Hung has not been having a good time in the top lane whatsoever, and picking up before your opponent has showed, not giving yourself any potential for a counter pick, could potentially hurt him. I do worry a little bit for LGD's top laner here.
I do as well. I mean, it is up against two face-up auto attackers, I assume is the logic here, right? You don't feel too bad or too worried about potential Trundle ganks on the Jax, because you can just counter-strike, you can leap strike your way over a pillar, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it is blind at the end of the day, so Xiaoshu going to have an opportunity to take his champion of choice up against the Jax, and we saw, you know, the Renekton versus Ambessa is not supposed to be that one-sided, but Xiaoshu made it that way. So
yeah,
a little bit of dangerous territory here for Sasa regardless. Okay. And there's going to be the Cassante locked on in.
Cassante into the Malphite, into the Jax. Could be a potentially explosive matchup if either of these junglers decide to go and get involved. Otherwise, this could still be back and forth between these two top laners. You do overall expect that the Cassante should be able to have a pretty chill time, but if Sasa wants to get aggressive, there's always the potential option right there. For the bans, both supports are still yet to pick. Both mid laners as well, still going to be looking towards a few of their top of the line pickups. There's really not a lot of the top of the line picks left for either of these two, right? The Victor, the Aurelion Sol we've been talking about. If you want to get more aggressive, the Akali could have been fun. At this point now, maybe you go towards the Aurora. I mean, in terms of things that you expect to be paired up with these slightly more aggressive compositions, a lot of it's been falling off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like the Akali ban here from JDG. It wouldn't surprise me if they do a LeBlanc ban here, too. It feels like Hongqiu is your control mage guy. He's going to play a control mage, and that would be an opportunity for Tang Yuan to just take his assassin of choice. He's played LeBlanc this tournament already. I think that would be the pretty default choice here. And then just taking away supports, it looks like, on the LGD side. And maybe there's just respect for this Braum, though, knowing that JDG are already kind of showing face up. They want to go in, they want to dive. They have this Kaisa already locked in, and they've got a Sivir that they're going to want to target. They're going to take away the Braum instead.
Indeed, they are. I think the Braum also just takes away a lot of threat from the mid laners that you do still have left available to you, right? Maybe you want to go towards something like the Hui, and that can get stopped dead in its tracks if you have a Braum available to just pop that shield up. Other than that, the supports really are what we're expecting to see a lot more bans towards, and it is going to be that Leona taken away. Is there a situation in which you try to take a Karma here and just go for a big poke lane? I think that doesn't help you too much. I think you do really need some extra engage really down in the bot lane.
I think you need to go Nautilus, right? The Leona and the Rakan are banned away. The Alistar and the Rel are fearless out. It's a fine duo with the Kaisa. I think Vampire just kind of forced onto that pick here. Not that he's going to mind it too much, right? It's been a champion that he's played more than anything else throughout his career, and he'll be plenty well-versed on it with the options that it provides. Are we going to see Elise support?
I wouldn't love it in this game. I don't think this is the game for it right now. No, the Poppy makes a lot more sense. There's a lot of dashes available to you. Obviously, it's that extra level of tankiness. You really do have a lot of very tanky, a lot of high survivability champions if you lock this one in. They're looking through a lot of different options, and it will be the Morgana. Okay, I think if you wanted any
This could be mid.
last indication that, yeah, LGD feel like they're pushed quite far back into a corner, that is going to be the Morgana. And the Morgana could totally still go in the bot lane. The Black Shield's obviously great into the hook. You could just say no and move on with your life. The ulti as well could be pretty fun. It depends, though, on whether or not you think that that 2v2 matchup's worth it, or if you just want to neutralize out a mid lane matchup. Exactly. They've been hovering it all day. And they're going to do it. Okay, it is going to be Bard bot lane alongside the Sivir, and this will be a Morgana mid here for Tongyuan.
I like it. You know, it's blind, so it's probably not going to have the dominant matchup you might be hoping and dreaming of. Honghu gets a pretty clear and easy victor angle here, if that's what they want. I think that's most likely. You could also play something like the Hui for a little bit of additional poke. The Ziggs would be an interesting showing here as well, just trying to abuse the range advantage that it provides. But
okay.
And yeah, that's what they're going to snap on up here. But I really like the look that a Black Shield brings in here when you're so reliant on the Nautilus to get into that fight. I mean, depth charge should never knock up anybody the entire game, right? That's the assumption that Tong Yuan is operating on.
And of course, having the Morgana in the mid lane rather than in support just gives you that extra level of access to gold, and Morgana can deal a hell of a lot of damage. If you get into the middle of your opponents, pop that ulti, put down that Tormented Soil as well, you're in a really good spot to be able to rip through some people. Now, whether or not Tongyuan's actually going to be able to live long enough to be able to do that, we will wait and see. But still, he's shown that he's been very accurate with skill shots, so that Dark Binding could also be very fun. This is the kind of champion that I wouldn't automatically look at Tongyuan and say, yes, this is your kind of champion. But when you think about it, when you reflect back on what this champion brings to the game, I think it could be pretty fun in Tongyuan's hands. Still, LGD, we've got a lot of ifs, maybes, but it could be fun. JDG just have a great comp. JDG just have got themselves everything that they could have possibly wanted, and with that Ziggs locked in as well, they're also just going to be mauling through towers.
Yeah. The Morgana's also, I think it's more skill expressive than it gets credit for. Like you called out, the Dark Binding, so important. And, you know, it is slow moving. If you can play, you need to kind of play around vision a little bit to land those really good and impactful bindings. But if you do land them, they matter a whole bunch. And the timing on these Black Shields is incredibly tight, right? There's committal abilities like Vampire's Hook, like Xiao Shu going in with the Pathmaker, that if you can Black Shield them and turn what was a engage trigger pull from JDG into JDG champions just throwing themselves out of position, that can swing entire fights, and that is where Tong Yuan can really have his impact felt.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump onto the Rift right here for what could be the final game of this semi-finals for the Demacia Cup. LGD, JDG up 2-0 right now. Both of these teams looking to book their ticket to the finals and a matchup versus IG.
I love it. I think LGD, this is my favorite comp of theirs so far. I love that they get the Malphite here for Hong. Just going to need it to see the performances in these side lanes in particular. Sasa going to have to be able to not get taken out of the game by Xiao Shu, and they're just going to need to be able to execute around Xiaoya on this scaling Sivir. Not get harassed out by Hongq Ziggs especially. We know how strong Hongq can be on a pick like this.
Yeah, and as much as Tong Yuan knew he was going to end up getting pushed around a little bit, like you said, not getting the counter pick was always going to result in this. I'm not sure if he expected it to be quite as rough as this Ziggs-Morgana matchup can be. The range advantage is massive, and you can see just constantly stepping forwards, throwing out those bombs, and there's not really too much that you can do during the early levels of Tong Yuan. You're just looking to survive, get yourself a little bit more gold under your pocket, head back to base. And once you get a couple of components down, that's when this game can start to come back into your own. For the early stages, it very much is just sit back and allow the game to happen to you.
Yeah, and, you know, that last round of Tormented Soil buffs lets Morgana, you know, play the game a little bit more in the laning phase. She's a champion that people were kind of unwilling to pick at all, and especially unwilling to pick in these solo lanes for that reason for a long time. But just getting that little bit of extra value on the W has kind of pushed her over the edge to where people are willing to play her now. And you can regen quite a bit off of your passive once you start leveling up a little bit more. But you can see Hongq is going to be the bully in the early stages of this lane, and that should be expected at least until like level 6 or so.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest of the lanes, are going to be a little bit of a different story right here. LGD, they're going to get the big push going on down in the bottom side of the map. Oh, thank you on. Fancy feat to get away from that damage. That could well have been a death situation. Doesn't even have to blow his flash, but yeah, really highlighting how miserable this is. But like we were saying, the top lane, bot lane, very big push is happening right now. It is going to mean that there's not really anything for Hung to do early on in terms of ganking, and that's good. You don't want to have to gank pre-level 6 as the Malphite. You're much happier to just sit in your jungle, farm up as much as you can, and then once you have that level 6, that's the point at which you are unlocked.
Yeah, and Tangyuan, good enough with his footwork to avoid enough bombs to be able to, participate in these waves and get himself a little bit of farm. Vampire getting an engage started over here on the opposite side, but will be absorbed without too much trouble. And I think we're going to have to note as this game goes a little bit later, just how limited the ability to start off fights for JDG is going to be. Vampire holding so much of that responsibility, but Black Shield and Spell Shield together, plus the Tempered Fate from Bard, there's just so many disengage options to keep this Sivir safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Potential gank right here. Junjia gonna come on in.
Oh,
no.
YCX goes through the magical journey and finds himself face-to-face with Junja, who will happily pick up a freebie. First blood goes to JDG as Junja. Right place, right time.
Absolutely. That was just a well-timed, well-executed gank right there. And the fact that he's also going to be able to pick up the kill on this signature Trundle is going to be massive. Really unfortunate for the bot lane of LGD because they had been playing this one out pretty well, but they get a little bit too aggressive and it completely leaves them exposed to the JDG gank. Now, heading back to base, we'll be coming back out onto the map with a couple of components is Junja, and he's going to be in a very strong spot right here to just rip through anybody that steps to him at the moment. Very much a strong early skirmishing jungler, and people kind of don't fully realize how good the ganking a Trundle can be because he doesn't have any hard CC, but the pillar's almost worse than a quick 0.5 second stun.
Definitely tough position there for YCX after a rough back and forth in the 2-on-2 and allow him to get cleaned on up. But still plenty of game left to be played here for LGD. And Sasa doing just fine in this top lane compared to game number 2 is keeping himself pretty close to even here as he seeks out his first recall. And of course, it is a bit of a race to level 6 here for Hong, especially. The Malphite doesn't do very much as a jungler before that point, and he just wants to make sure he's going to have it for any kind of follow-up play coming up in the next couple of moments. So few camps away from that milestone, hoping to hit it before too long.
Got a first Drake available on the board as well. Gonna be a Cloud Drake, which doesn't usually draw the same level of attention, especially as an individual Drake, as a lot of the others do. Still, having control over these objectives has been a really big thing throughout this series. JDG have been slightly better at picking up objectives without losing so much on the backside of the fights, but that has not stopped LGD from constantly being happy to go, try skirmish, and get involved around these objectives. The Drake going to be started up by JDG, and I mean, you've got pings going down by LGD, but they're going to be very late to the party.
Yeah, we'll see if they can still participate in said party. Hong is still level 5, Junja in the same category. YCX kind of leading their charge forward here, gets the electrocute proc on a Vampire, gets the stun into the wall as well. Hong is in range, does not win the smite fight. It goes the way of Junja, but what about the follow-up fight? Damage still getting pumped into Vampire. He's at about half HP.
No.
Mega Inferno Bomb comes over the wall. Xiaoya going to be able to shield it, but he gets thrown back in by the Satchel Charge. Xiaoya's got to get back over to the magical journey to get himself out to safety. Does manage to do so, but a dangerous-looking fight for LGD.
That might be one of the most effective magical journeys I've seen in years, managing to get every single member back out of a position they had no business in being in. Just a bit of mispositioning right there from LGD, not recognizing that Honky was on his way in, throwing out all of the damage that he has, popping down the Mega Inferno Bomb too, and just ripping through the health bars. It's pretty worrying that that's the amount of damage that they took that early on, considering that's only a lost chapter in Honky's inventory.
Yeah, for sure. Big damage comes through from that Mega Inferno Bomb. Good call from Xiaoya to shield it, but really well played Satchel Charge. Kind of makes the difference in that fight. If Xiaoya was able to stay safe the whole time, might be looking at a different result, but JDG show up yet again, and they get their dragon to boot. They're about 40 seconds away from the Grubs. Very expected to see some brawling over that as both teams send their bot lane duos in through mid. But it's actually going to be Gala now laning up against Tangyuan.
Yeah, just going to be rotating things around a little bit, trying to just keep the CS rolling in as quickly as possible and just allow Tonkyuan a little bit of an easier laning phase than he was having versus this Ziggs. Has actually done a very admirable job of being able to keep up in terms of CS. So nothing too bad has ended up happening throughout that early laning phase, even though we saw the amount of damage that Honkyu could do. The fancy feet really kept him in this one.
Really did. But now he finds himself pretty much even in CS here and has ticked over to that level 6 point. 3 points in W is a huge threshold because it lets you one-shot the caster minions. And getting access to the chains, not going to be too bad either, as they do start off work onto these grubs. Sasa getting pushed around by Xiaozhu a little bit here and will lose a fair amount of his health. But the grubs are starting to fall, and they are falling in the favor of LGD.
Yeah, nothing to be done about this one for JDG. The rotation from LGD bringing all of their members up to the top side of the map just allows Gala to have some alone time with this turret. And as much as he hasn't really established himself too much of a big CS lead, two turret plates in his inventory potentially will be a lovely injection of gold, getting very close to having that first item completed. And Gala had a brilliant game number 1, pretty quiet in game number 2, going to be looking to have a bit of a bounce back right here on a Kai'Sa that you can get very aggressive with in this game, but that also has a lot of threats going to be bearing down onto it. You have to imagine that both Sasa and Hung are going to be looking for his head during every fight.
They definitely are, and he's going to have a tougher job than the likes of Xiaoya, right? He's just facing down a lot more reliable Engage and a lot more Engage in general. Sasa, though, getting collapsed on here. There's 3 members showing up to this brawl. He doesn't have a ward or anything to jump to, but he does have the counter-strike to keep him standing for a little bit longer. Flashes back away, now gets to the minion wave in time. Meanwhile, Tongyuan TPing up the top, gets the chain, gets the soul shackles, but Xiaoshu is able to flash out in time and stay alive. But getting collapsed on by more members. YCX comes in from the top side. Cosmic Binding doesn't connect. Hong still a little bit far away. Does he want to commit the unstoppable force? No, he just wants to take a turret shot and get back to the Krubs.
Yeah, I mean, trying to full commit to that one would have likely been a very bad idea, but look at what you're losing on the rest of the map now. Yes, you're going to get a decent chunk of damage down onto the tower, and with the grubs, LGD do take them slightly faster, but you're losing out onto tower plating mid lane. You're losing out onto tower plating bot lane, and this is a problem we've been seeing out of LGD. It wasn't exposed by the likes of the weaker teams like AL, but JDG are just using the macro decisions of LGD against them.
Oh, Honkyu taking some turret shots there. I don't think it's going to make a difference, and he will have the execute to pick up first turret. Will be traded by LGD in pretty short order, though. That's the power of the Ziggs, is the difference between first turret and second turret there for JDG. But all in all, the gold going to be exchanged pretty close to evenly.
Yeah, it's actually going to be pretty impactful, that tower going over to JDG. It was very close. LGD were doing everything in their power to try to take down the tower top lane quicker. And with the 3 grubs, they nearly were able to do it. But because we haven't had any of those other feats going on over, that first tower going to JDG could be pretty big. Getting those upgraded boots in this game is going to be really nice overall, as we do start to see those first items coming through completed for a couple of the members. Blackfire torches in both Honkyu and Tongyuan's inventories.
Yeah, really going to amp up some of that damage over time. You love to see it on the Morgana in particular, to be able to bump up how much you get done with Tormented Shadow. And this Dragon going to be started up by LGD, looking to stop the stacking from JDG as soon as they can and keep Xiaoya safe in this fight. Here's the first test of how well these teams are going to interact in the team fights. YCX going to get caught out on the side, gets hooked on in. Bahong just going to take that as an opportunity to engage on the Vampire. Sasa basically one-shots him as Xiaoshu pulls Hong out to safety, but Tempered Fate connects on it too. Xiaoshu forced to jump back away. Sasa falling lower and lower, able to get away, but Junja chomps down onto him, and somehow Xiaoya is cut off from the rest of the team. It gets chomped down the very same. LGD lose 2 members in trade for Vampire.
And they're able to pick themselves up. The Dragon as well are LGD, and maybe could get a pick onto Gala. Yup, that's just going to be the Dark Binding. Goodbye to him. And so that ends up actually being a 2-for-2 overall. They're going to be able to step up to save this tower, though. Tongyuan decides yes.
Tangyuan feeling safe here. Oh, the non-bow! As Satchel Charge pushes both members out of the way of the dredge line, but still, Hongq's got the damage to finish off Tangyuan. He's going to get traded on as the turret shots find their mark. YCX gets that kill credit thanks to his contribution from the Meeps.
And that was a messy couple of players at the back end of that team fight. We'll have a look back at this one once again. And as you're watching this one through, it's just the amount of space right here being bought by Zhenzhe. He's just constantly fighting onto multiple members, drawing Sasa away, makes Xiaoya turn tail and run. He's not able to just sit and deal damage. And then Hongq, he's been chilling throughout this entire fight. He's able to grab that big kill here. Obviously, you lose Gala on the back end of this fight. There's just a bit of a mistake on this map rotation. And this decision I'm not sure about, right? Going over the wall. Okay, we're not going to watch the end of that, but going over the wall there, it resulted in a 1-for-1, so obviously it wasn't bad in the end. This could be bad.
What a combo there from Hongq. YCX able to get himself out of danger in time, but the Mega Inferno Bomb just dodged away from by YCX, but he gets hit by one more bouncing bomb. Too many threats to deal with at once for YCX, and he will drop down.
Hongq kind of sick with it, though, isn't he? Like, this is great. This is a really impressive performance right here from him on the Ziggs. A little bit of a funky pickup, something we haven't been seeing so much of, although it's not completely out in the realms of possibility. It's popped up a couple of times so far, but he is really taking it to that next level. With the Blackfire Torch in inventory, he's wrecking people.
Yeah, as Tangyuan getting spotted out here by Vampire, will be able to Black Shield his way right out of it. Junja still finishes off the ground that he came for one way or the other, and Hong can't really say much one way or the other. So they will be able to back away, but I love the highlight there on Hongq. You can see those Satchel Charge combos have gotten a lot stronger over the last couple of patches. I don't remember when it was. I think close to the beginning of the offseason, they buffed up the ratio on the little minefield, and it ups your damage output so much if you're able to actually get the combo with Satchel Charge to force them into multiple bombs.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount that it does at this point, like rank 3, rank 4, is like 44, 50, 60. I mean, it gets way bigger at this point, and the amount that you can just shred through people is really frustrating to play about. We talked in game 1 a lot about the zone control that you have when you have a Kiana composition, when you've got yourself a Talia, right? Can you step up into this choke point? Well, the answer is usually no. It's the exact same thing with the Ziggs. Any choke point, you're going to obviously have a minefield to walk through, but also it just funnels you straight into those bouncing bombs, dealing 1 billion damage per, and it's so annoying to try to play against. And already Hongq dealing his damage, taking up his space. It's making it so much easier for the rest of the players on his team to actually execute their teamfight plans.
Yeah, Sasa alone on the bottom side. JDG have all 5 members of their squad up towards the top side for this Rift Herald spawn, but it's LGD who are going to be the ones to start up on it first. Hongq actually making his way down towards the bottom, so it will be a 4v4 over the objective, or so we believe. Sasa getting some combat started with Hongq there, as it looks like much the same happening up on the top side, but Hongq at risk of getting solo killed. Sasa takes him down. Meanwhile, the Rift Herald falls the way of LGD. Tangyuan and Xiaoya have their fight line set up, but look at that damage coming through onto Hong. He's going to fall down in an instant, and YCX is going to have to bail out with the magical journey. Sasa's solo kill, though, makes this an LGD favored play all day long, baby.
Absolutely. The fact that they're able to just about limp away is going to be massive. You do lose a single member, not going to be the end of the world. And where did that come from, Sasa? He's had a very quiet series so far, hasn't really been able to find too many big plays, finally going to be allowed onto a slightly more aggressive champion than he's had on the majority of other plays. Teleport's coming in. Is this just going to be a full engage? Sasa wants blood.
Sasa wants a Gala. Gala has no flash. Vampire doing his best to interfere, and it will be successful. The dredge line stops him from connecting a Counter-Strike stun, and Xiaoshu TPing up means that they do not want to go any further. Does get a TP out, so still a valuable use of your time, but Gala will survive to play another day.
TP for TP right there, so both of the top laners are going to have to think more carefully about these upcoming plays. Teleport down into the bottom lane coming through from Tangyuan. He's going to take over this lane. We'll have a quick look back at what it was that happened during this Rift Herald fight. And it's just a really nice ulti right here.
Oh, Hong.
Hong, you can't. At that point, you deserve death. At that point, you know, in that fight, him going down was exactly right. Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate. You can't be doing that with that ulti, right? This ulti is the big point of the fight, the big point of this composition, and to miss it there,
Yeah, the Dragon going to get worked on here by Hong. They will be able to finish it on off, and they do successfully secure it. 2 Dragons to 1 now in favor of LGD. The gold only about 2K in JDG's favor. I feel like we've been in this position many times tonight, Bloxer. If LGD can manage to not bungle their team fights, though, we still, as we could every time, see this being a close game that LGD could pull ahead in.
Yes, absolutely. LGD, whenever they've been able to find themselves some of these big fights, it has looked okay. They just don't quite seem to have that overall coordination between them that they need. And yeah, once again, just going to take huge chunk of damage. Han going in, though.
Unstoppable force right onto this low mana Hong Q. He will be forced to flash away, and he's not going to be able to provide much support in the fight either. Sasa up in the front line, throws down the Grandmaster's Might, but pulled over and over again underneath the turret by Vampire and Xiaoshu. Still manages to stay alive and manages to retreat. Hong Q going to be TPing back in here before too long, but first he's got to complete the recall. They try to work on the mid-outer turret. Sasa falling lower and lower. Xiaoshu throws himself into the back line, cannot connect. The third cast of Intofo strikes, and they will not be able to find any kills for their efforts, but Gala going to be alone at the bottom side, trying to work on this turret. Tang Yuan cut off by the pillar, getting hammered by bombs from Hong Q, and just barely manages to stay alive for now, but needs to avoid the last couple shots, does do so. But JDG, they've bought the time, and Gala about to pick up a solo inner turret. This is a fat chunk of gold.
It really is. Getting a huge injection right there. He's going to be well on the way, if not fully completing that second item on this recall, and Gala's going to be in a spot to completely take over the game. There it is. Rageblade completed for him. And you are in such a strong position. LGD, though, that was an impressive attempt at a fight. A couple dark bindings from Tang Yuan not quite landing. Otherwise, things could have been completely different. And at the point at which Hongq teleports back into the play, they have to turn tail and run. He is so incredibly strong at this point.
Yeah, I mean, on the bright side for Hong, no flash available for Hongq now. And you will have Malphite ult back before that. So much chain CC coming through onto Sasa here. It nearly is the death of him, but all in all, LGD are able to keep up the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Still, this is what we've been seeing time and time again, isn't it, Gordo? Every single time that LGD go for a play, somebody is not there, and they're still not able to find these plays, and they're losing stuff on the backside of the fight. If you're in a 4v5 situation, you should at minimum be winning the 4v5, but they're just not finding those kills to make it worthwhile losing a tier 1, losing a tier 2. It keeps on happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of gold into Gala. The thing is, it is on to Gala, who is in a bit of a tough-to-play game, right? He's the low-range Kai'Sa in a team comp without a lot of engaged tools, and where he is at risk of just getting CC'd and blown up by so many different members of the LGD lineup. Gala going to have another one of those pop-off, mechanically impressive performances for that gold to make a huge difference.
Absolutely. If they can just keep pressure up right here, there's always a chance that you're going to find a little mistake, something that you can potentially punish. And talking of punishing, Atikan is going to join us on the Rift right here for one of the final times we're going to be seeing in competitive. Something you can always throw around, you can always change your fortunes about. Right now, you can see Xiaozhu and Tang Yuan going to be sat up in the top lane. Both of them do have teleports available, so they're going to be able to join up with the rest of the teams if the fighting does start. And I mean, looking at the rest of this series, you have to imagine both teams going to be hankering for a fight.
Yeah, Vampire has spotted Sasa there, so they know that he's hanging out at the bottom side. Tang Yuan has access to the TP to join up the fight. Xiaoshu TPing towards mid as he gets ready to participate alongside the rest of his squad for this potential Otacon. Tang Yuan has to be able to get on over here before it's too late. Gala might be cut off a little bit from the rest of the team. Sasa jumps on in, but will immediately have the space that he needs created for him. Hong throwing out some of these pinwheels as well, but will not be able to find the angle in. They're going to want to wait for Tang Yuan, you got to believe. Tempered Fate comes out, doesn't find its mark onto Junja, and he will back away.
Just about. Again, Fancy Feet really has been ruining a lot of the plans out of LGD. They're still looking to keep the pressure up right now. Tang Yuan pushes in mid-wave, is going to come down to join up with the rest of the squad. Teleport in the backline from Sasa. He's looking for a big flank.
Yeah, Sasa arriving, going to take a rest and reset on this flanking plan after having gotten spotted by Vampire earlier. YCX taking a little bit of poke damage from Hongq earlier. Reminder that Hongq is without flash. Hong and Sasa, if they can get onto him, could really blow him up. YCX is the only one who's taken damage really so far, though. Redemption to try to top himself back off as Xiaoshu coming in on the flank. Will get spotted by Xiaoya. Xiaoya caught by the entire team, cut off from the rest of everybody else. Junja going to get worked on, but he pops the subjugate and will be able to stay alive. First member down is the Sivir. However, Xiaoya already out of here. They try to chain CC onto Gala. They will be able to finish him off, but Junja able to get a second kill for his efforts. Sasa in a 1 versus 3 over inside the Otacon pit, and that is not a fight that he's going to win, but Tang Yuan is still showing up and representing as he manages to execute the opposing team's jungler. Sasa trying to keep the fight going will finally be cut down by Xiao Shu, and now it is up to Hung and Tang Yuan to try to win this 2 versus 3, or at the very least stop the Otacon from going down. Xiao Shu will find one. Xiao Shu goes in onto both. Tang Yuan going to be able to immune it with the black shield, keeping Xiao Shu perhaps further up than he'd like to be. Hong Q continuing to rain through bombs, and everybody just says, we don't want any more of this, and tries to back on away.
And that has taken so long that Xiaoya and YCX are going to respawn and head back out onto the map once again. Same thing for the JDG members that had fallen down, but it should at least be this Drake going over to LGD. It's messy, it's bloody, it's a bit of a weird one, but in the end, LGD, they actually come out with the objective.
And it's about as bad of a fight as LGD can have, right? The Sivir dies instantly. The Sivir finds herself 1 versus 3, getting blown up by Gala, but you can see how hard the fight is to play for Gala from that point on. I'm sure we'll get a replay at some point. He dives in and is just blown up immediately, even though he's taken out his counterpart.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a weird fight right there from LGD, where yes, they immediately get themselves a catch onto Junja, but who cares? Xiaoya has already died. Still, both of these teams potentially just gonna go for round 2. Most of the ultis have come back up and available, so this one should be another big brawl right here. No flank here for Sasa, though. This is a straight-up fight.
Yeah, he's just walking his way through Xiao Zhu, and Xiao Zhu is making him feel it, but they do manage to connect the binding on a Vampire, and that means Vampire is done for. Smite fight over the Otacon. Up next, an early smite from Junja gives it right over to Hong, and LGD are now rocking the Otacon. Big redemption across all 5 members. It's Xiao Shu up in the front line, getting worked on. Big counter-strike across 3. Locks down Gala and Hong Q, but the turnaround damage onto Sasa is too much, and Xiao Shu is somehow staying alive in a 1 versus 3. Now he moves forward onto Hong, and the rest of LGD have got to try to cut their losses and get the hell out of here. But Hong Q has finished another member in the form of Hong, and Xiaoya and YCX are the last ones standing.
And this has been an incredible series so far from Xiaozhu, and he once again has a massive fight. Multiple times right there where, yes, your main members are getting pushed around. Sasa goes flying into the backline in what should have been a massive turnaround play for LGD. Pick themselves up the Atacam, pick themselves up a couple of kills, but it doesn't work out that way because Xiaozhu gets into the backline and is just body blocking and buying space for his team to cut through this Jax. We'll take a look back at this play because it is... Is this the first? This is the first.
This is the first fight.
This is the first fight in which Sasa just immediately dies. What you're not watching, because we watched Gala through this play, is, I mean, this was weird. I'm not sure why Gala decided to go for that, but hey, I kind of respect it. Hang on. Picture in picture.
Wait,
this is just going to be the Baron
Tempered Fate stopping the Baron, who's at half HP. JDG trying to secure it for themselves. YCX is the only one here. Here come the reinforcements, but the Baron's falling lower and lower. 2K, 1K, smited down by Junja, and JDG get the Baron buff. Now Xiao Shu looking for the engage on the opposite side, but a last whisper has been picked up for Xiaoya. Back through the magical journey to get himself back with the rest of the team, and that means that there's no more fight to be had. JDG commit highway robbery, and they're wearing purple.
This is just a crazy game, back and forth. The pace has really picked up right here in JDG. They're going to be moving on to this tier 2 tower in the mid lane. You've at least got Sasa pushing bot lane, so you've not got multiple lanes coming through. JDD, they won't be able to push fully forwards and grab themselves this tower, but they're just going to keep the pressure up and high.
Another binding.
Wait.
Now they're going to full send it on to Xiao Shu. They think they can finish him off. He falls down to about a quarter HP, and now he's basically out of the fight, but Hong going to be in the same category. Sasa TP's in, and these boomerang blades are being felt as they bounced over to Vampire, and we're able to take him to the ground. Xiao Shu now in the all-out form, going to get bound once again. Lands a big and Tofo strike through 3, but Hong will be able to finish him off. 2 members picked off Gala on a sliver.
And that was just bad decision-making right there from JDG. Rather than heading back to base, spending all of the gold that they had in inventory, they decide to keep pushing on forwards. And it wasn't small item breakpoints that they had on that reset. You have got that full death cap now completed onto Honkyu that he didn't have previously.
Oh!
Tangyuan's just dead. Tangyuan is very dead. Not exactly the place he wanted to be in. There's at least something back for JDG. Still, they've lost a bunch of the Baron buffs that they did have previously and were relying on to really help them crack open this base.
Yeah, I mean, wonderful pillar from Junja there to get Tang Yuan off of that blast cone.
Yep.
Can't fault him too much, but that is a possibility you have to respect if you're in Tang Yuan's position. And JDG now still rocking Baron on a couple of members, now find themselves in a Tang Yuan-less world for about 20 seconds. Could they even manage to break open the base on this? They've got Hongq pushing on the bottom side.
And anytime you've got a Ziggs, some alone time with a tower will immediately result in its destruction. Still, Hongq not going to decide to push too far forwards once again. Instead, just going to head back to base, spend a little bit more gold, grabs himself an arm guard. So he's going to have access to that gold, and that could be pretty huge. He's one of those key members LGD are going to be looking for during the team fights. And to now have that extra bit of delay coming on through, I mean, especially if you end up getting hit by Tempered Fate, right? You could survive completely untargetable for a very long time.
You sure can. And that's what we're going to be trying to see. How much untargetability can be obtained there. You got the Tempered Fate to help you out. Xiaoya going to be forced on back here, trying to kite this one out. Xiao Zhu going to be once again taking the brunt of the damage, and they're just going to choose to full send it onto him. Tempered Fate lands on it too. Xiao Zhu left out all alone for quite a bit of time, and Sasa throws himself in. He thinks he can finish off Gala, but he's taking too much damage on the opposite side, has to go into the stasis, and Xiaoya was knocked back into the team. It's Hongq with the satchel charge once again being the difference maker. Picks off Xiaoya, and the rest of LGD will crumble around him. JDG with 4.
They're going to punch their ticket right here into the finals. There's so very little that LGD can do. YCX going on his own little magical journey just to buy a little bit of extra time, but it will not matter in the end. The push is happening straight on through the mid lane. They don't need minion waves. They've got themselves a Ziggs, and it's one last desperate play out of LGD that's going to spell their doom.
10 seconds on Xiaoya, but it's just going to fall too fast. Trundle plus Ziggs doing what you pick them to do. The Nexus is exposed. Xiaoya is too little and too late. JDG will clean sweep this series and get themselves a date in finals with IG tomorrow.
IG, JDG, finals of the Demacia Cup. I mean, I can't think of a more hype matchup than we could have seen. I'm sad. I am sad for LGD. I think that they had been a very fun team throughout this tournament, and they'd made it so far, right from the very beginning stages, Group Stage 1, all the way here to the semi-finals. An admirable run from them, and some momentum that they can certainly build on for 2026. But in the end, they came up against a JDG that's just on a roll right now.
Yeah, I mean, what a game from Hongq there. I was very impressed with the Ziggs performance. It's not a pick we've gotten to see from him very much, but really showed up where it mattered there and had some incredibly crucial satchel charges to turn plays that looked like they might have been disfavorable into real big wins. I mean, that was a 3-item Sivir. We had seen her in previous fights be able to take over, but he shuts that down right away in that final fight and turns what could have been LGD continuing to build momentum and grabbing a foothold in the game into a quick JDG win and an end to the series.
What you needed here for LGD was a lot of things different, but in that last game, it was Xiaoya getting that 3 items that little bit quicker, because we saw multiple team fights beforehand where he was actually able to sit and hit for quite a long time, landing a lot of those boomerangs, and you were highlighting it brilliantly, right? Where he was hitting, and it was beginning to deal damage, but it was always beginning to deal damage and never fully coming on through. You can see it reflected here. 32,000 damage. It's not a bad amount of damage. It's way more than Gala was ever able to do. Unfortunately, Hongq was just on a different level in this game. But it wasn't just Hongq and his damage, which was massive. It was the fact that Xiao Zhu just refused to die. There were multiple fights where so much damage was being pumped into him, and he was living on slivers of HP and still playing. Just Cassante things, I guess.
Yeah, 48% damage percentage for Hongq in that last game. I'm going to take a wild guess at who the player of the game's going to be there. It feels pretty deterministic, but I mean, you saw some good fights and what the engage potential of LGD were able to do, but when Xiaoya can't sit there and free hit, when he doesn't get the opportunity to play out his team fights the way that you would prefer, it just becomes too difficult for them to be able to win. And I mean, Hongq played pretty much every fight just as well as you could, except for this time that he gets solo killed.
Yeah, I mean, this was unfortunate for him, but at some point you are a Ziggs and that is a Jax and it's walking at you, and you know, sometimes things happen. Other than that, a truly incredible game from him. And a little discussion we'd been having before today, just looking at these teams, looking at these players. It was a discussion of what can the members of CFO do here in the LPL? Because historically, players moving over haven't necessarily had the best time of it. So far, it's looking pretty dang good. Honkyu in this one was popping off, and that's not to mention the fact that everybody was really just playing together so well, but Junja and Honkyu kind of are the driving force, the engine of this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's been, a lot of players coming on over from APAC before that just haven't really been able to find that success at the LPL side. Kind of the only ones that really have found success are Sword Art and Karsa. But apart from them, it's kind of just been a long line of players just not quite living up to the hype when they make the jump over to LPL. But this is a big opportunity to kind of upset those expectations. Junja and Honkyu are two of the biggest names from that league right now, and they so far are looking quite good with this new JDG lineup, and will be starting off their LPL journey with a trip to the Demacia Cup finals.
Exactly. I mean, off the back of what was an incredible performance from CFO at Worlds, right? Beating T1, Fnatic, FlyQuest, all of those teams that you usually expect to just be able to win, get knocked out by a KT roster. You get knocked out by a KT that went to the fight. Who cares? That's not a bad look at all from an APAC team, and the fact they're able to move over here into the LPL, and at least in Demacia Cup, pop off as much as they have been so far, is really encouraging, especially if you're just a general JDG fan or just a general LPL fan. JDG have been a bit for quite a while. Their 2025 just never really got off of the ground. They were fine. You don't want fine from a JDG. It's such a historic roster. It's great to see. And this is very deserved from Honkyu.
Absolutely is, and well earned by him over a fantastic game. Again, representing half the damage for your whole team, it's hard to do anything other than give you the player of the game there. So let's take on a look at our playoff bracket. JDG's win here will solidify the finals. It will be JDG up against IG in a best-of-5 to crown the 2025 Demacia Cup champion.
What a matchup this is going to be. Two teams that have had very similar runs through their groups, right? Not quite managing to make it all the way through their groups in the strongest form during stage 2, but have got into this knockout stage and really begun to find their footing, really begun to find a way to play as a full 5-man unit. And there should be some really fun matchups across the board right here. Photic up against Gala, Renard versus Honkyu. I mean, this should be a massive match.
Yeah, I think underrated matchup that I'm going to have my eyes on is going to be Saburo taking on Xiaoshu. I've been real impressed with Saburo so far in his run of the LCKCL rookie, making his debut with IG. Very excited to see him in the finals as well. It's going to be a bunch of fun. It's going to be here. It's going to be tomorrow. It's going to be the same time, and you're not going to want to miss it. But until then, we're going to be closing out LPL English for now, Bloxer. It's been a great time spent with you and with everybody at home. But from both of us here, as well as production and everybody working behind the scenes, we've appreciated spending time with you, and we will see you next time.